Hey, we in the house. Yes, literally in the house. We are here at the home of a great person, great business owner, great entrepreneur, and a great veteran that had the pleasure and honor of serving our great nation. And I'm here with Mr. Will Reed in the house. How you doing, Will?
Hey, better every day.
Every day, brother. Every day. Listen. So I'm gonna tell y'all, man, like I am super excited to be here and super excited to just share with you a little bit about cybersecurity and just talk about life. This is the whole thing, man. I'll be totally honest with you. When we look at what's happening in the world, all the things kind of moving and shaking, all these things happening here and there, it's kind of hard to sometimes not worry about various things, and one of the things that I think people worry about is like, hey, our system, the system we kind of roll on, anything from our electronic grid to, the internet to our phone systems. I mean, everything. They had this movie that came out, and it was just where they had hacked in the thing. It was a movie I had saw on Netflix, and they hacked in the whole thing. But the whole grid, everything went out, and people couldn't communicate with each other. There was planes that were diving into people's backyards and everything, and it was just that all happened from a cyber attack, right?
Yep.
And I thought about that, and I was like, wow. And so I think we think about things like, and the whole nation was under disarray. I mean, I'm talking about everything was crazy from people not wanting to help each other to the food sources. I mean, it was crazy. It was like we had went from one civilization to just not even being a modern civilization in that short period of time, and that all happened from cybersecurity and or a lack thereof. And so this is the thing. I mean, and how realistic that is, I don't know. I mean, but that's something that we're here to talk about. And so, and I wanted to, and I'm gonna come back to you, Will, because I do want to ask you about that. But before I do that, just tell everybody about yourself, who you are, and then just kind of give them a little glimpse into your life.
Yeah, sure thing. So I grew up actually not too far down south of here, actually Hinesville, Georgia. I was an Army brat. My parents were both they both served in the Army. And so I grew up down there in Hinesville, Georgia, graduated from Bradwell Institute. Both my parents are still together to this day.
Oh, wow.
They're a great inspiration to me and my wife. So my dad, he retired Army down there in Fort Stewart, Georgia. Okay. And I didn't think I was going to join. And it just kind of worked out that way. I was kind of lazy in high school first couple years, and really didn't get it together until about the 11th and 12th grade year. Didn't take my SAT, so my GPA wasn't looking right. Didn't have any scholarships really lined up for me, no real college aspirations. And then a couple recruiters hit me up. The Army kind of sparked my interest. They started talking about being able to serve and get a skill and get the opportunity to go to college. So I was like, okay, well, that actually sounds like a pretty good deal. I had a fro. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to get rid of this fro.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I ended up joining 2001 after I graduated. Like okay. 2 weeks later, I was out the door going to basic training. And so my job that I picked, I didn't even know it at the time, was actually IT for military intelligence systems. And I ended up being a jack of all trades. I was doing system administration, doing network administration, doing SATCOM, doing all aspects of IT. And it created this really a desire for me to just want to fix things and want to help people out. So a lot of that is just customer service. This person has something wrong with their system, I go try to figure it out. So there was a lot of discovery that was involved that just really, really piqued my interest and got me very, very involved in trying to solve those problems. And later on in my career, we started the Army started implementing, along with the rest of the DoD, 8570, which was just requirements for cybersecurity certifications, just for you to be able to do your job as an IT person. So that was my first introduction into that. 2013, got my first security certification, Security Plus, and now I'm about 17, 18 certifications later. I have really grown to love this field. Cybersecurity is what I transitioned to after I retired, and I ended up working for the TSA and the Secret Service doing security controls assessments, risk assessments for their information systems, and also doing risk analysis, that type of thing. And my next gig was a serving more of the private sector and working with small, mid-sized businesses. And I was working for companies that had a security program already, and we're just kind of keeping everything in check, doing quarterly meetings and reviewing policies. And then organizations that had nothing, literally had to build everything from scratch. So I grew a love for cybersecurity, and then just wanted to help organizations out, just like I was helping out my fellow service members as they were operating their systems. And it's been a great blessing to our family. This is a very rewarding field as well. I got 5 kids, not quite at your level. You got 7 kids. I'm not there, and not looking to get 2 more to catch up with you. But me and my wife, she's with me the entire journey. We met in high school. And
wow.
And so we're together to this day. As a matter of fact, it'll be 21 years in August.
Oh,
wow. So it's been a great blessing to my family. We moved here. We retired here. Right how it used to be Fort Gordon, but now it's Fort Eisenhower. But it's the cybersecurity capital of the Army.
Yeah.
And so it's a great place to set up roots here, and then also pursue my business and my career aspirations in the cybersecurity field.
Man, that's amazing, man. That's amazing, man. I mean, there's so much in there, man. Like, when so did you have a clue when you were younger that you were even gonna, I know you had your parents in the Army, but did you think you were gonna take that same path? I mean, what?
No, actually, I had zero desires of joining the military, and really my dad and my mom didn't really push that on me either. Both of them served. My mom got out when she had me, and my dad went ahead and retired. And once I got into high school and was trying to figure things out, and once I actually started talking to the Army recruiter and started taking it serious, because I didn't even do ROTC because I did not want to cut my fro.
That's right.
I loved having that hair. But so it was just something that never really dawned on me to even pursue until that recruiter exposed some of the benefits that the Army was going to be able to provide. So I had no idea, and that was definitely not on my radar. I thought I was a basketball player.
Okay.
And I didn't know I knew that, there's a strong chance that I would not make it to the NBA. And I was what else would I do? It's like, if I do go to college, what am I going to major in? I had no clue. I was like, I'm not going to go up there and try to figure things out knowing that I'm not on scholarship. So I'm going to have to try to work, maybe do loans. I'm like, that's an expensive way to try to figure things out.
No, totally.
The Army was a perfect solution in that, like, hey, we'll give you a skill, we'll give you a trade, we'll pay you, we'll take care of you, we'll move you all over the world. You get to see the world. And and it just provided me, again, an opportunity to see something from a different perspective. I was an Army brat, but actually being in and being able to experience those things was a different light. My dad, again, he never pushed it, but once I made that decision, he was like, okay, let me let you know what all the jobs are. So I at least had some idea what I was going to, but I did not know I was going to be fixing it. I thought I was going to just be working on systems like, typing stuff out and and collecting signals and stuff like that. But they told me, like, you're going to be fixing this stuff. I'm like, I was not prepared for that, but it was actually the best decision I made.
Man, that's amazing, man. So how long did it take you to develop the skills when you were when you got into the Army, like to where you were proficient at it? I mean, how long did it take you to actually get good at fixing stuff?
Yeah, great question. And I was in one of those fields where it was actually a longer period of training that they prepped me for. So typically the Army's, you have basic training, which is just you go and learn how to be a soldier. You learn how to fight, hold a weapon, shoot a weapon, do PT, drill and ceremony, march in a circle in a straight line and all that. Then after you graduate from basic training, then you go to advanced individual training where you go into your specialty. Okay. And normally those specialties are anywhere from, maybe 6 to 3 6 months. I'm sorry, 6 weeks to about 3 months
Okay.
is about average.
Okay.
Mine was about 11 months.
Wow.
And because we were expected to be able to touch and be able to fix a whole plethora and a wide range of different types of IT systems, they had to kind of make sure that the training was able to provide that level of insight and ability to solve problems on different types of systems. So it was definitely a longer, and as a matter of fact, when I got to my first duty station, I had already been in the Army a whole year before I even got to my first duty station. So I was in that training phase for a whole year. And so once I got to that duty station, I was at Fort Hood, Texas, and you get assigned to a shop. And then there you get assigned to a unit, and then they have certain types of systems. And fortunately, I somehow got favor with the overall person in charge of our shop. And whenever there was something new coming out, he's like, hey, send Reed over to that training, make sure he goes.
Yeah, that he had.
And the more I got to be able to experience more training and then get on systems as well, and solve problems, we had, they would call them work orders, and like, hey, this is what's wrong with this system. Here's what, and then they give it to you, go figure it out. And so we had these manuals, we had some of the training that we had, and then we kind of married the two together, figured out. And then once you start solving problems, you start building that skill set up. But it was just definitely favor from my officer in charge. And then also I ended up deploying very early too. So I got to Fort Hood in 2002. I deployed in 2003. And then once you deploy, you just focus on your job. And so just doing that repetitively day after day got me pretty good at it. And I actually surprised myself because I kind of struggled through the first part of my advanced individual training because in my mind, I wasn't fixing stuff when I was at the house. Computers we just had one computer at the house, dial-up internet.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
The only time I jumped on there was I had a school project I needed to work on. I need to do some research and then jump on the internet and then wait 20 minutes before to connect and then do my research. But fixing computers, I was
exactly.
had no idea. So that was a new skill set, new way of thinking that I had to learn. But again, I ended up getting good at it just by repetition and keeping on and getting exposure to different types of systems.
Oh, wow, man. That's amazing, man. So, you talked about problem solving, so that is huge. And I think, I have a book I'm finishing called Solving Real Problems. And it's just about, I have a thing where a lot of people in business, they'll just do things just because it's a hot trend or AI that everybody, I'm what do you do? I'm in food AI. They just throw AI on it, and then, I'm in carpet AI. Really? They just follow the trend. It's okay, but are you really solving a problem?
Right.
And I think that that's very big. And I think in our when I was a philosophy major in college, and a lot of people, they thought that I was a business major because I do so much in business. But my philosophy, what it taught me was, because I saw the people in business, they never made. I said, how can you teach me how to make $1 million? You never made $1 million before. And so I said, instead, I said, I want to go after something. I always enjoyed philosophy. The beautiful thing that it taught me was how to think through things, a lot of critical thinking, looking at having scenarios and things here to where I was able to think logically through it and find solutions, right? And when I think about the actual field that's closely tied to philosophy that most people don't really think about is in the IT computer field, because a lot of that, even when you're looking at programming, all that is logic. You're coming up with, you can't teach a computer to do it if you don't know how to do it and what you want it to do.
Right.
And so when they were putting you in these places, man, because and it seems like you just got a lot of reps. Just really, and that's the thing I always tell people. I tell my daughter, tell my son, I'm like, y'all have to get more reps in. You can't expect to be good at anything until you get the reps in.
Right.
So when did you feel like, okay, I don't just know it, but I'm more of a master at it? When did that happen?
Excellent question. And It took a while for me to get to that point. Now, I was fortunate, and we had shops, and the way the Army's organized is as you're coming in new, you get assigned somebody that's in a leadership position over you, and they're your manager. But you also have people that are in the shop that have been there a while, and they specialize in the system. We had people that specialize in a certain technology. And so if you had issues, you would like, hey, like you're trying to figure something out. Like, man, I looked in the manual's not helping me solve it. My training that I had, like I still can't figure it out. You go to those people and then they help you out. And so in the beginning, I really didn't think I knew anything. I knew what was taught. I knew it was in the manual. I knew I could solve some problems, but like the difficult stuff, I'm like, I'm still not a master. I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
And then it was, I think the first time I actually thought that, I was like, man, I think I actually know what I'm talking about now. I can actually do this thing. When my first deployment, and so my officer in charge, the person in charge of our shop, he sat me down once I got assigned that deployment. He was like, hey, Reed, you're going to go out there. It's going to be you and another guy, but for this system, you're it. You got all the training. I've been sending you all this. I've been preparing you for this. When you go, if you run into the issues, I need you to contact these civilians. So we had the civilian contractors, and then also DA civilians that would also deploy with us, and they were really, really experts. Or on the contractors, they were the experts on those systems, and then on the civilian side, they were logistically responsible for maintaining the system. So they get us all the parts that we need. And then they also try to coordinate getting us things in, shipped out. And so when I was out there, we had one issue with our system. I went through all the training, I went through all the manuals, and the system was still not working right. But I was like, I think that this card on this system is supposed to do this. And if it's not able to get a certain signal in, and if we're not seeing that result, then that's probably the problem. I don't see it in the manual. I don't remember in the training, but I think that card is the problem. And so we ended up having to fly out to another site in order to get to that civilian that was able to kind of order the parts. And he actually had a bunch of spare parts on hand.
Okay.
And so I got there and I was like, hey, look, like, I don't know if this is actually the problem, because it's not captured in the manual. It's not I never got it in the training, but I think this card is actually bad. He was like, all right, cool. If you think that's it, let's just swap it out. We swapped it out. System came back up.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh, wow. He was like, hey, man, I like how you think and I like how you work.
Yeah.
If you get out the Army, because that was actually a pretty common thing for our specialty, because they taught us to do so many things and our skills were in so much demand.
Yeah.
As soon as we got out, a lot of those people would become contractors and then be making $100, $200, sometimes $300,000 a year.
Correct.
Just to deploy and do the same thing, but just with one system.
Yeah.
So, but he was on the civilian side. He was like, hey, like if you ever need a job, if you ever get out, like, hey, you need to come work for us. And here's my card. Just hit me up, and then I'll make sure we take care of you. I'm like, all right, I appreciate that. So I think that was the first time I felt like an expert. Now, the other side of this field is, especially for me, is imposter syndrome. IT is so broad, and you can go so deep. And I felt like because we had to learn about so many different systems, and sometimes you just didn't have time to just sit with one system. Some guys in our shop were able to do that. I was never one of those guys that was able to just sit with the system except during that deployment.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I never felt like I had that level of expertise in a lot of the systems. And I didn't feel like I had mastery. And when I applied to become what's known as a warrant, I started off enlisted, and then I became what's known as a warrant officer, which is considered to be a subject matter expert. And what they do is you get selected, and then you become that officer in charge that was in charge of our shop. He was a warrant officer. And so I was like, man, I was like apprehensive about submitting my packet. It took me like 3-4 years to even just, it's like, I don't want to submit it, and they rejected it. And now I feel extra bad because not only did I think like I wasn't super great, like they were like, yep, you were right. You really ain't that great. So I didn't want that feeling, but my wife encouraged me, and I ended up submitting it, and I had a good body of work behind me. And I got selected on the first time, first attempt. I went through warrant officer school, went through the training, and then you're considered the subject matter expert. And it's just, I knew that I needed to commit myself to just really diving into the technology, the systems, and really learning a lot more. And then I eventually got to the point where I consider myself to be somewhat of an expert on those systems, but also it also challenged me because I knew that the next system is coming out. I wanted to make sure that my soldiers that I was in charge of had that opportunity too, to like, hey, let's get you specialized, let's get you some additional training, let's let you dig in a little bit deeper so they can build their confidence and they can be masters and experts too.
Wow, man, that's amazing, man. And then it took a lot of courage and faith, man, to really just even make that happen, man, and just to say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna get. And I think this is what happens with a lot of us. We're the thing that's holding us back when
100%.
It's not even that everything is there. It's like, well, you should be able to do this because of this. You should be able to do this because of this. But then you're like, but I don't know if I'm ready to do this. I don't know if I believe that I can do this.
Right.
But yet and still, we can see somebody else with the same things and say, well, hey, you're supposed to do this. But then with us,
right.
It's like, and that's what I tell people all the time. I said, we can have faith in other people more than we can have faith in ourselves sometimes in this.
Yeah.
And it's in no foundation, no real evidence to support it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's crazy, but that's what happens. So, so when you now you're warrant officer and you're rolling through, so, and you have these other people now that before it was the converse where somebody was more so pouring into you and believing in you. Now, how did it work now that you were in the other seat? Was that a new skill that you had to develop, or like how did that work in the beginning? Just you having to now believe and invest this time into these other people that now you're in the shoe of a warrant officer and they're your soldier. So tell me about that.
Yeah, and I was in a kind of a unique position, and the rest of the Army is supported by the Signal community, which they have a set of MOSs, a set of jobs, and a set of people that specialize in certain areas.
Okay.
And so, they got a specific, MOS, a specialty that is just, systems. They work on servers and workstations like that. They got other ones that work on routers and switches. They got other ones that just work on SATCOM. They got other ones that just work on radios. And but our field, we had to know it all. Mm-hmm. And so again, that term "jack of all trades, master of none" mm-hmm. was definitely something that I really kind of embodied, and I understood, unless you just sit down with one thing, you're not going to get that deep level knowledge. So as I started progressing through my career and I became a warrant officer, the other thing was, because we were technically military intelligence, mm-hmm. we did not get a lot of extra training when we went to go to our professional development courses within that field. So I had to take it upon myself to enroll in college courses, try to pursue other certifications in order to be able to get that level of skill, knowledge, and ability to be able to fix some of these problems. These deeper problems that you have to do some research and you have to go and do all these special commands. And so once I started doing that, I realized that I needed to make sure that my soldiers that I had also understood that I needed to put them in environments where they could build those skill sets. So I started trying to logistically procure certain training for them so that they can build those skill sets that they did not receive once they did their professional military education. So, and then the other thing is just having a good network. We had because we were such a small community, mm-hmm. when I became a warrant officer, we had this distro list of all warrant officers, current and retired.
Okay.
And we used to also email each other. And so if somebody had a problem, hey, I'm on this system, I'm doing this. Manual didn't tell me anything. I looked through here. The contractors they're scratching their heads too. What do you think? And there's always one person that hey, I had this issue 2 years ago back in Afghanistan. Here's what you need to do. Don't go to that thing. The manager's going to tell you to do this. This is what you need to do.
Oh,
type that command in, and here's a spreadsheet. This is kind of what the output should look like. And then they oh man, that actually worked. Cool. So I made sure that I tapped into my network of people. If I had a problem and I needed to get some additional assistance with solving problems. And then B, I also try to contribute as well. So if I experienced something, I make sure that I was able to provide some valuable feedback. And again, I wanted to build within my soldiers hey, if you don't have the information, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the skills, don't just let the problem beat you.
Correct.
Like, just go to the next step. I always tell them Google is your friend.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a YouTube video or
Yeah.
Google or something out there that can also help you. And I wanted them to be problem solvers.
Yeah.
And so building up that desire to want to just like, I don't want to keep having to reach out to my network. I want to make sure I exhausted all of my resources, all of my know-how before I reached out to them, because I wanted to make sure I took ownership of my own professional education, and I wanted to instill that in my soldiers. So again, just providing them opportunities, letting them know that you got a network. You don't have to just sit there, and we call it like frying on a problem. You just like your brain is just getting melted.
That's right.
And you can't even do regular stuff anymore because you've been sitting in that problem and it's just destroying you.
Yeah.
Like, look, just ask for some help.
Yeah.
And then once you realize what the solution is, take some good notes. And then now you shouldn't have to go to them again for that same problem.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I help them kind of develop and then build that mastery.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, man. Like when you're talking about a couple things. So I love the way they had that body of knowledge that's continuous. That's the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize about progression and evolution when it comes to things in society. The continuous thought, and a lot of times, you'll have things that where you'll have thought or something that somebody was able to build on a body of work, and then when they stop, that body of work has stopped, and then somebody else picks up a body of work some further place down the line.
Right.
And so, but I like the way they had all the retired and the active people, so y'all can use your collective mind, together to solve those things, man. I think that's something to where even in a lot of other fields, they should have that, because, like you said, there was always somebody there that could kind of source that. So I think that's a whole nother thing right there that we could kind of really roll on. But I remember you were speaking about, and you were saying about being a jack of all trades, and although you may not have been a master of apparently anything so deep in particular, you were a master of being able to see the bigger picture.
Right.
And that's the thing. I think you have to have both. You need those subject matter experts that can go deep down into something, but you also need to have somebody that understands how all this stuff fits. Because a lot of people, when they're in that lane, they don't understand, well, how does this fit within this? So in essence, what you were the subject matter architect of, you were more like an architect.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, and what they refer to us as is systems integrators.
Okay.
So we had a collection of intelligence systems, and so when they deploy, they all have to talk to each other.
Correct.
And also have to pull in information from other sources and disseminate information back out to the community, to the war fighters, but also to our strategic elements like the NSA and those sources back in the States. So we had to kind of bring all those systems together. Mm-hmm. So that was my main role, is like, hey, how do we get all of these things talking together, communicating, working, configured, and then executing, making sure that the intelligence that we gather gets analyzed and then gets disseminated out to the people that actually have to go and really go kick in doors, go drop mortars on people, but also ultimately accomplish the mission. So, but yeah, that was seeing the big picture was something that I also had to kind of just get some additional guidance on in terms of some really specific mentorship. Because I was, again, up until that point when I became a warrant officer, I think it was up to once I became a chief warrant officer 2, I went to we have these collective mind mails where we talk about the progression of Army West. Like, hey, this is the type of training we need to be doing. These are the types of jobs that we need to have skills at. These are the types of systems that we need to be working on, and we need a skill set developed around. And I was like, hey, all the warrant officers, they need to be experts on this. So all the training, they need to have advanced training on all these other things. And one of my mentors, he was like, hey, whoa, Will, hey, so let's talk about that. Yeah. So it sounds like you want to be the guy, the expert on every single system. Like, yeah, I'm the warrant officer. I'm a subject matter expert. You're a warrant officer. You should understand this. He's like, bro, your brain ain't that big,
Exactly.
and you don't have enough time to do that.
Yeah.
You need to see the bigger picture and make sure the bigger picture is working together.
Yeah.
You can't clone yourself. So what you're doing is you're creating a vacuum to where if you're ever not there, nobody can solve problems at an advanced level. So what you need to do is you need to build up smaller subject matter experts in those particular things so that they can be the ones that like, hey, you would know enough to guide them and direct them, like, hey, to kind of help them solve a problem.
Sure.
But ultimately, you want to make sure that they are equipped to be able to go deep and dive, because that's going to be hours of stuff that you don't have time to do that. You need to be working on making sure the bigger picture is still going, because as soon as that breaks, that's down, something else is going to go down. But because you're down deep in that rabbit hole, you can't even see the other things that are messing up the rest of the warfighting function.
Correct.
So once I was, but it took me a while to kind of for that to settle in.
Yeah.
But that following deployment, I kind of, again, when you're on a deployment, and especially I always did longer deployments. My shortest deployment was 10 months, and the longest one was 15 months. I did 4 of them. So halfway through, you get a chance to go home. So like you go home for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and it was amazing that like before I made that connection, when I come back, like everything is in just disarray. Like, oh yeah, gee, we've been waiting on you to get back because this and this was broken. I'm like, why couldn't y'all figure this out? I created that.
Correct.
By me, they all come to me with the problems. Okay, I'm gonna go solve this for you.
You being the most important person.
Exactly.
I always tell people, I say, if I'm the most important person in the business, something done went wrong.
Exactly. So what I needed to do, I was like, okay, I need to build some continuity. I need to build some subject matter experts that can own something, and then they dive deep into something, and then that way I can leave that problem. They go dig and they eventually find the answer. And then once they do it, all right, cool, let's bring that. And we call these like knowledge management. So we have these big books and then shared folders where we had all this information. Like, hey, this is how I solved this problem. This I was like, all right, cool. Hey, take a snapshot of the screen, write down the stuff that you did, and then make sure that now, instead of this taking 2 hours for us to solve, this is just a 20-minute, hey, check that thing, change these configurations, and you're good to go. So once I made that transition based off of that guidance that I got, I was able to have my mental space go to more strategic things that only I could solve. Like those were things that they could solve. Correct. I just wouldn't let them do it at first.
Correct.
Now I had to do things but that was at the expense of all the things that only I could do.
Okay.
So once I made that transition, I was able to think more broadly and then be able to affect more change, and then also make sure everything still stayed up and running, and just, again, creating little pockets of ownership for other people so I could delegate. And then also when I left, not everybody was just kind of, oh, well, Chief Reed, and like now everything is gone, right? But yeah, I think that helped me out just coming to that realization.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Because I'm gonna tell you, man, when when we do that, I mean, I always tell people all the time, it's the bus analogy. They say if you get hit by a bus, then what happens?
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? And so one of my mentors, he told me that, because I remember asking him for a significant amount of investment back in like 2006, 2007, and he was like, and he said, son, he said, and even though I had people working for me, that was the thing. See, I think a lot of people think that just because you have people working for you, that if something happens to you, that the train will still go.
Right.
And that's not the case. Mm-hmm. What are they doing? Have you trained them? Have you put them in a position to where if something happens? See, a lot of people just try to get people on their team who are, how would I say, complimentary to them. Mm-hmm. But nobody can do what they do.
Exactly.
And so, and that's a problem. Oh, yeah. So, because I mean, I've been in places where, things have stopped because I was the bottleneck. They had to bring it through me for it to go forward. And I like, but who teaches that? And this is in school. They teach you about the technical side of stuff. Mm-hmm. They teach you about, oh, you can do this, you do that, you do this. They don't teach you, hey, when you're in an organization, you never want to because that's a big issue. And I think this is what we should be teaching more, like in school, about, hey, how do you not put yourself in a position where if something happens, then the whole ship is sunk, because you were that key element. Is there a backup for you?
Right.
And is somebody else maybe, is there a backup for them that maybe knows a portion of what they know? You know, and these are things, man, I think are so important, and it's just wild that we don't think about that. And so this is why I think that, you know, when we're looking at what we're looking at in society, and I think this is the thing too, the wrong information. I was just looking at a study by, I think, a Wall Street Journal, and it was saying how almost 60-70% of parents now don't believe that college is going to give their kids what they need for the workforce. Okay? This is, and I don't think it's ever been a time like this since I've been alive, and maybe since our parents are alive, and maybe since their parents were alive, where college did not have as much significance or less significance as it does today. And so, at least in the minds of others. And so this is why when you were speaking earlier and you were talking about different certifications, and I see, the thing is, college was supposed to prepare students for the workforce, right?
Yeah.
You know, to produce people to be able to go and make these jobs happen. And what I've seen a lot of times is people they're able to study real hard, fast for a test.
Right.
And then they take the test, is in a short-term memory. They don't remember any of the stuff
100%.
afterwards.
Yep.
And so, and it's just like, so I'm looking at this and I'm, you know, that's something has to change with that. And I think we have to start looking at, that's why I'm really big on certifications. That's why I'm really big on, you know, people learning and doing, because I believe in the execution of it. You learn, and where you even learn, where I've learned the most is in the teaching of it.
Yeah.
So as a teacher, as an instructor, as I'm training people, it's like my knowledge of the subject goes even deeper. So I know it on a totally different level. What do you think about it?
Yeah, and one of the things that I was thinking about when I was retiring is how do I make sure that I have employment when I get out? And so part of that, again, just I grew up and like college was like, hey, you go to high school, graduate, you go to college, graduate, get a good job, you know, work for 40 years and then retire. Mm-hmm. And to your point, yes, absolutely. College is designed to create bodies for the workforce, mm-hmm. right? Workers for factories, workers for companies. And so that was one thing. So I made sure that I took advantage of getting my degree when mm-hmm. I was in. Mm-hmm. You mentioned certifications. I think that certifications also help you stand out and make sure that you validate the knowledge that you have, mm-hmm. and then you get a certification that says like, yes, you are skilled at this area.
Sure.
The third thing that jobs are like really in order to do a job is experience.
Correct.
Which I think is now becoming the biggest thing.
The thing.
And you know, and college degrees are becoming because really the college degrees, even if it is in cybersecurity, computer science, IT, a lot of it is theory.
Correct.
And you don't necessarily have that hands-on knowledge or going out and it's one thing to go and get a test and then get a simulation and like, all right, cool, I could do that. It's another thing to see the nuances of technology in the real world to where it isn't just like that in the lab environment. They've had all these other different pieces of software that have been placed on top of that to where things don't operate like they did in the lab. Same thing with interacting with businesses and individuals that have issues. A lot of that is just, it's rapport, it's your ability to communicate, it's your ability to like, hey, this is a very highly technical problem. How do I explain this to the CFO so that I can actually get funding in order to solve this problem?
Correct.
Right? And so one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I understood was how do I develop skills in certain areas that help me to obtain certifications. So when I would study, and I loved your comment about being able to teach something mm-hmm. helps deepen your knowledge in that area. Mm-hmm. And so one of the courses I took, they had an introductory portion of it. It was like, hey, try to learn this material well enough so that you can teach somebody else. So as you complete a section, learn it well enough so you can teach somebody else. And that's when you know you actually got it.
Got it.
So that's what I like. So all the areas where I put that level of effort and intentionality into learning, mm-hmm. when I got the certification, cool. But that stuff didn't just sit in my short-term memory. Like it actually is ingrained, so I can talk at length about it even to this day, even though I haven't, maybe touched that technology in a long time, or I haven't touched that field of security in a long time. I can talk to it because, like, hey, I learned it well enough to where I can teach somebody else.
Sure.
So I think when you get to that point from a knowledge perspective, and you couple that with hands-on, like, hey, I've actually jumped on the system and done that. I've actually dealt with a client and walked them through how to build an incident response plan. Now that's supporting mastery, that's supporting expertise, but that's a skill set that you build that isn't tied to a piece of paper. Again, we call these like paper certifications, where people they get either a boot camp, or they get a test bank where they get all the questions, all the answers to the questions that are come on exam, and they memorize that and they get the certification, but then they get on the job and they don't know what to do.
They don't know what to
or they
do.
get into an interview and they get exposed.
That's right.
And so because I'm real self-conscious, I was self-conscious about entering the workforce, which was like, I'm going to check all these boxes. If they ask me for a degree, yep, I got it. If you ask me for experience, I got 20 years. If you ask me for a certification, I got a bunch of them. Right? And so same thing. I was like, I did not want to go to put something on my resume because I got it on the certification. And, like, they start asking me about it. I'm like, when you connect the doohickey to the widget, and then you get a green light on the other end. I'm like, a doohickey and a widget? I'm like, what are you talking about? So, just learning things like for the sake of, like, I need to be able to apply this. I think that should always be the approach, and that's what kind of helped me along the journey of getting certifications. Then also when I get to jobs, again, you don't know everything. It's just all that gives you is the ability to say you have the potential to be successful at a certain line of work. Every line of work that I jumped into, I thought I was an expert, but I also, like, after that first experience, you get humbled. I don't know this. I need to go and do some more research. But as long as you have that thirst for knowledge, that thirst for, like, hey, I need to operate in excellence. In order to do that, I need to keep learning. I need to keep pursuing. I need to keep producing and operating in excellence so that I get the results that they hired me to get.
Correct. And that's the difference, man. I think that it's the knowing of, philosophy. One of the greatest, the most popular pieces in philosophy, when you look at it, Plato and Socrates, and you look at how Socrates was this philosopher that Plato wrote about, and would say that, hey, they say, well, you're the greatest in the land, you're the smartest in the land. And he would say, I can't be smarter than this statesman's over here. And he'd go talk to the statesman. And the statesman, when he would finish talking to the statesman, he was like, I guess I am smarter than him. Reason why, though? Because the statesman thought that he knew everything. He didn't know. He didn't know that what he actually knew wasn't even actually real or factual or true. He was under the assumption that he was right. When in fact he was wrong. It's the difference with Socrates. He said, I know that I'm wrong. He said, I know that I don't know. That is and I think this is a crazy thing with a lot of people that are in society, not just in the workforce, but in general. We assume that we know things that we don't even know. And this is the thing. So, and I think that all starts with a level of humility. And so that's when you were speaking about what you're saying. And, I told people, it was funny. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, I forgot more about business than most people know. I said, but every day, I mean, when I was driving down here, I mean, I'm listening to my podcast, I'm listening to my audiobooks. I'm consistently feeding myself because like you said, it's that thirst for it. And having something that you're passionate about, that you can thirst after it, and then just being curious, I believe that's, I'm just a naturally curious person. That's why, people interest me. And I think when I can ask them questions, that helps to satisfy that knowledge that I was seeking. And so I think it's very interesting when we look at, right now what we have, the problem that's really been created in not only the United States, maybe even in the world, to where we've created these education systems that are not relevant in today's society, especially considering the advent of systems like generative AI and all of these different types of technologies that will make traditional gopher jobs, and I say go for this, go for that, go for this, go for that, that will make those jobs kind of obsolete.
Right.
So you got to know how to think.
Yep.
Right. And so, when I think about that, I'm like, that's why I believe we have to just be wiser at how we're building our workforces.
Yeah.
We have to be wiser. Like, the experience thing is so important. This is why I think every person that's out there, before I would go to a college, I would find a master and sit at the master's feet.
Yep.
And learn from the master. And this is the whole thing. And I tell people all the time, you have, apprenticeships. You have a level, what they consider a journeyman, and they're out here on the path to become a master.
Right.
Okay. And then you have that master there, right? And so, and this is typically the process as it has been for millennia. Now, why then were we so wise to think that we could just change that path? That was a path that created excellent craftsmen, excellent people that were super skilled in areas. They followed a master, journeyman, apprenticeship, journeyman, master type of format there. But yet and still, what we see in our society now is, hey, teacher, student, I'm giving you, ABC, repeat, ABC, more of the Prussian type of school system environment. And when my first actual experience in school was through a Montessori school system, so through Maria Montessori, and that was really where they actually ended up saying, okay, you know what? We're going to let you guys go out here and try these pieces here yourself.
Right.
Okay. And so through that, we were able to I was able to figure out, okay, this, figure out that, figure out this, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but it was only through the experience. So, what I want you to talk about now is really getting people experience. We have an apprenticeship program that you've developed in your company, okay, to where you can take regular people, right, that are just thinking about coming into this industry,
right,
and getting them the experience, the training to learn from a master so that they can roll and go. And the thing I love about the apprenticeship system, with the United States apprenticeship system, people don't understand that when you get that apprenticeship, it has greater value than any degree, because what it shows is that you have actual practical knowledge of a subject. And so, and that apprenticeship, that degree certification can follow you wherever you're going.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Touch on, and as I was mentioning, the whole apprenticeship program allows for, it is like is better than a degree, because that actual apprenticeship, that actual seal that they have, once they get that apprenticeship, it can go with them everywhere, and they can say, oh yeah, I had this apprenticeship. And that apprenticeship is in a lot of cases better than that degree. So even a hairstylist, they don't have to go to cosmetology school. They can study under a master cosmetologist, okay, and they have the hours there in that point, and they will give them the cosmetology license, just as if they had went to a cosmetology school.
Right.
And so, and this is the same thing that you get from an apprenticeship. So if you're learning under somebody that is doing videography, and instead of going to videography school, you have this certification that you could, or this apprenticeship seal that's sealed with the government to show, hey, I know this, okay? And I've been trained in this, and not only I have experience in this. And so could you talk about your apprenticeship program and why you even wanted to start something like that in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. What we find is that, like, and I'll use my own experience. So I ended up getting a pretty advanced cybersecurity certification the last year or two I was in the Army. And it's called the Certified Information System Security Professional. So the CISSP is, they call it like the grandfather of them all.
Okay.
And so it shows that you have the ability to understand security across a bunch of different domains, a bunch of different aspects of IT and information systems.
Okay.
And one of the common monikers they have is that you're a mile wide but an inch deep.
Okay.
So you get to touch a bunch of different areas, but you're not necessarily an expert in each one of those individual areas. And so when I got my first job, it was a cybersecurity job, but my job in the Army was mainly IT systems, and they're two different things.
Okay.
Now, I was confident. I had the certification. I had a degree. My degree was network operations and security. It was really more network operations than security. And so when I got that job, it was all around the risk management framework, which is all, security controls, understanding how these security controls impact an information system, and how those information systems, based off of what level of security they have applied to them, impact the risk of both that system, other systems, and the organization that they're assigned to. And so I was in for a rude awakening in that, like, I really did not have a deep grasp of all of those security controls, and like I was familiar with the framework, I never really dealt with that on a hands-on basis. How to go through and prepare a system, how to select controls, how to assess the system, how to go and get that system accredited. I was always on the other end, on the sysadmin side, where they were coming to assess my system. I just had to give them access, show them my logs and all of that, and they were good. All right, cool, yeah, it looks good, Chief. We'll hit you up in a couple months, and then you'll have your accreditation if everything's good. Actually going through and evaluating and assessing those individual controls is something that I never had hands-on experience at, and so I struggled with connecting the dots in a lot of senses. I had to kind of learn by doing, and it cost me some time on the job to be where I felt like I was effective. I was kind of like, I get introduced to something, it'd be a problem, like I never experienced that, give me some time. I go back, do some research, come back to it, and I'm able to speak to it a little bit. And so I say that to say that I feel like I would have benefited from an apprenticeship program if I'd even known I was going to get into that field. I didn't know where I was going to end up. But I felt like I could have benefited from an apprenticeship to where I could have bridged that gap. I had a level of IT knowledge. I knew the systems, but in order to apply security principles, capabilities, evaluate controls, and then figure out how to get that aligned and get compliant, I did not have that skill set. So our apprenticeship program, it teaches you the theory. Hey, you understand IT, you understand the principles of security. Hey, the difference between confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and how those work together to provide a protection mechanism that defines how a system is secure. How all these systems work together, firewalls, antivirus, EDR solutions, access controls, how all of that works together in order to secure a system. So we get them the theory to where they understand how all that works together. And then because I have a business and I also have clients that I support, we would then anonymize those clients so where they don't see the names, but hey, they need to build out an instant response plan. Hey, these people need to do a risk assessment, and this is all the systems that they have. These are the gaps that they have. These are the people that they have in place. These are the number of policies they have in place. Let's evaluate that, right? And so then we walk them through how to work through each one of those controls on a given framework and what that means. Hey, when they're asking for this is what they mean, and this is the question that you should ask that person that's in charge of that department in that company. These are the things that you should be looking for. You should be looking for a policy. You should be looking for their procedures, which is how they implement the policy. Hey, this is what we should be doing. This is how we do it. And then where's the evidence? Give me some screenshots. Hey, look, these are the screenshots that they provided. Do you think this provides enough evidence? And then we talk through what is sufficient evidence, what isn't sufficient evidence. And then when they get that practical experience on, again, how to approach it, how to evaluate it, how to understand the controls, what they're asking for, how to then evaluate whether or not that system or that that department or that company met the control standard, then we're able to now, like, okay, I understand, and this is the level of risk that they're at because they have these controls implemented, these ones that aren't implemented. We have some compensating controls that kind of fill in the gap to where they don't have a full control implemented. And then we then produce a product, an actual product that we can give to that business and solve hey, they didn't have an incident response plan, they now have an incident response plan. They hadn't done a risk assessment, they now have a risk assessment. And so when they get that theory, and then we also, over the course of that, we then give them opportunities to also get some certifications. There are some vulnerability management certifications. There are some certifications around exposure management. And once we get them that certification, they have the confidence in like, hey, I have the theory. I know how things work. I know how to assess and review controls and understand them. I know how to assess risk. I also know how to implement a strategy to prioritize how we then fix certain things that we've seen that are wrong with this company as a whole based off this whole risk assessment. They might have 12 things that are wrong. We can't solve all 12 of those things at the same time. Correct. We need to put some priority around it, right? And that's a risk-based approach that we try to teach. Hey, what's the highest risk? And we start there, and then we start working our way down. And so once they have all those things together, then they have completed the apprenticeship program. And then we also help them develop a resume so that they can articulate how they have developed and acquired those skills and how they have applied that in a real world scenario, on a practical exercise, or hands-on with an actual work product for an actual legitimate client. And so once they're able to put that on a resume, that makes them a whole lot more competitive, number one, when they enter the job market. Number two, it gives them the confidence to know that they can immediately come into an interview and actually answer those questions. I don't just have theory, I know how to actually apply this. And so if you ask me a question about it, I can tell you how to do it, not just what it is. So they can speak at a level of depth. And then number three, it gives that employer the confidence to know that they're bringing on somebody that is going to add immediate value because they know at least the framework and the basics on what needs to happen, and they've done it before, to where now those particular nuances and like, hey, we actually do things a little bit differently here. They know that all they have to do is just kind of get that Delta training, and then they're able to hit the ground running immediately, as opposed to kind of like me, like, hey, I don't even know enough in depth to even figure out how your change is different from what we call it in the Army, we call it doctrine versus actual your tactics and techniques and procedures. Doctrine says one thing, like, hey, that's the theory of how things should work, and then this should work. Hey, if you aim your army at their army and you guys shoot, if you have more ammunition than they do, then you should be in a better position. Well, no, like, hey, do you know how to aim? Correct. You know, are you doing other methods to be able to, like, hey, maybe I can get a 2-for-1 for somebody, right? Correct. Maybe I need to change my caliber around so I can, hit more people at once. So those are like the techniques, tactics, and procedures that differentiate between, like, hey, like, this isn't just theory. This is how it works in the real world, and then this is our level of understanding. So I didn't have that basis of knowledge, so I was at a disadvantage, and I don't want that for anybody else that's transitioning, especially my fellow service members. I know they have served their country honorably, and they're now transitioning, and it's a daunting task. It is it's the military world, the lingo, the just mannerisms and how we communicate. Like we use all these acronyms, and nobody else can be like, hey, like, what do you mean by ACP? Oh. So you got to explain, like, oh yeah, I forgot I'm not talking to a soldier. So you got to explain certain things, right? So I think that just going through that experience myself just put a desire in me to make sure that I set up my my fellow servicemen, but also people that are transitioning into cyber, maybe from IT, or that are just kind of getting in on the groundwork. We can have a tailored program to really kind of baseline them. Again, that's why we start with the theory, and so they can connect the dots and then build up that skill set, that knowledge, and then culminate in an applicable application of how they implement that skill set in a real world application, a real world product, a real world problem that they're solving for a company and an organization. And so I think that's a winning strategy, and we owe it to the workforce. There's a big cybersecurity skills gap that is out there.
Talk about that. What is? I mean, because the skills gap, man. I was like, even if we wanted to hire people, people don't know.
Right. Depending on which report you look at, it's either, hundreds of thousands of jobs or, a couple million people that are short in the cybersecurity workforce. So our threat actors, commonly known as hackers, but just people that are trying to break into organizations, get access to sensitive data. They're the ones that are trying to shut down, water plants and treatment facilities, or they're trying to shut down governments, local municipalities, all that. They are developing skills, and then they're applying those skills immediately. But we don't have enough people that are skilled to defend against that, to understand when an attack is happening, to understand how to implement protective measures in. Most organizations, especially you start with a small business, is usually one person that is skilled at, hey, I know how to make this widget.
Exactly.
And I'm real good at making this widget.
That's
I'm going to sell this widget to everybody I can.
That's right.
And then they start putting it, and then they set up a website. They're like, oh, they're not a web developer,
exactly.
but they got a website. And then, I need some software in order to go along with that. Oh, I need an email system. I need a database. I need, a share drive. I need all this technology that couples with my business that, like, I'm not a technology professional. I know how to make this widget.
Yeah.
And so when you look at like what actually brings revenue in, we don't think security bringing revenue in. We think, I need to get some more people to go help me I need a sales team.
Yeah, correct.
I need a business development guy that's going out and finding new contracts and finding new opportunities that are bringing in.
Yeah.
And so those are things that as businesses grow, they start working at functional things that bring revenue in. Oh, I need an HR person to handle all the personnel because the CEO ain't about to be hiring people and sitting in on boards and all that for interviews. And so you start developing that, but then security is usually an afterthought,
because we have faith in that nothing's gonna happen. We have faith in, hey, I got this this security software right here, and it's good.
Yeah, I got Microsoft. I installed my antivirus.
Yeah, the antivirus is
like, hey, I'm protected, man. My internet service provider provided me this nice little router and modem, so they say it's secure, so I trust.
And nobody has really. You don't experience it until you experience it.
Exactly.
So you think, oh well, I never had anybody that nothing happened, so I'm good. That happens on TV.
Right. And you think as a smaller business that you're not a target. So like we think that, these threat actors are actually going after these big companies, or they're going after the United States government. They're not worried about, Will's, ice cream parlor that's on the street and we're selling ice cream. Like, they're not worried about me. But really, when threat actors they scan the network and then they're looking for what we call vulnerabilities, so gaps in your systems, low-hanging fruit. They just see a blip on somebody ain't got that. Who's that? Let's see what we got in there. Snap! Like they got all this personal information that I can sell on the web for money.
Yeah.
And so now, again, you weren't a target, but because you weren't secure, you became a target.
Yeah.
And so we call that in the Army a soft target. Like we present, like this is why the Army, especially like the standard Army, is we got our uniform, everybody's looking the same, and then we're everybody's doing the same thing, and we're all vigilant and alert and all that. And so like, hey, but if I let you just come to work with shorts and then you got your top on and all that, and like, hey, that you don't look like everybody else, that presents a soft target. They're not disciplined. They're not disciplined enough to be the same all the way around.
Yeah.
And so that's when like they like, hey, you need to again present a hard target. They need to see a guard force up there looking around like, oh yeah, they got some people guarding. We ain't going to attack them on the front. We're going to figure out something else. We're going to find somebody else that ain't got no guards, and we're going to hit them.
Correct.
That's what threat actors see when they go and then scan the network, and you got a vulnerability. You don't have a system in place to protect that, to alert you when something's happening. You are a soft target. Yeah. And so they're going to go for that because, hey, why would I spend 3 hours trying to figure out how to get into this secure facility when I got the doors wide open next door? Correct. I might not get as much, but I'm going to get something, and I'm not going to have to expend a whole lot of effort, right?
Correct.
So what we see is that we don't have enough people that are trained to identify when attacks are happening. We don't have enough people that are in place in organizations, just period, to even like advise, like, hey, I know you want to, hire a sales force. Hey, we need to hire a systems engineer to be able to, or a security engineer to help. Like, hey, we got all this infrastructure. We need to figure out how to secure that properly. We need to figure out how to control access. We need to figure out how to have somebody teach us how to look at an email and understand when, hey, this is a phishing email versus a regular email. Like, hey, this one is trying to get me to click on an attachment. Exactly. And I have never gotten an email from this person at all. Like, hey, click on this attachment. Like, oh yeah, click on it. And then the whole system is compromised. Right. And so it's just, again, building that awareness to like being able to teach people how to recognize when something's wrong, when something is off. But B, also trying to build out a security program so that we can do what's called defense in depth, where we're looking at things from top to bottom. We're looking at the firewall, what rules are in place. We're looking at, what endpoint detection and response systems, where something happens, I have software that automatically is tuned to implement some sort of protection. Like, hey, we're just going to isolate that. Like, I know it doesn't require me to actually do anything. That software automatically goes and like grabs that. Hey, we're going to isolate that, and then we're going to tell you about it. And like, hey, you can make your own decision. Is it good? All right, cool. If it's not, all right, cool. We delete that and we go about our business. So being able to identify what solutions need to be in place to secure the network, and then what people need to be in place to manage those systems, and then what knowledge do I need to have as not only as IT or a cybersecurity professional, but what does the entire organization need to have a security mindset? Because you can have all of those things in place. If somebody clicks on a link, all of that is out the door.
Open it up.
Right? And so again, having a ability to have some awareness and be able to train that is something that we're severely lacking. And then the last thing I'll say about it is how people or how organizations pursue candidates to fill these roles is also a little bit broken. So we talk about, entry level positions to where like, hey, we need somebody to come in, but they put all of these expert level requirements and assign it to an entry level position. So like, hey, I have a CISSP. We talked about that certification a little earlier. That's an advanced cybersecurity certification. It requires years of experience in multiple domains in order to even qualify for it. And you'll see entry-level job applications that are asking for that certification and 5 years of experience, but it's an entry-level job. Like, you're paying this guy $60,000 a year, which again sounds good in other fields, but in the cybersecurity world, that's kind of baseline for our type of work.
Correct.
You're going to pay them that amount of money, but then you want a bachelor's degree in computer science, and you want a CISSP certification, and you want 5 years of experience for an entry-level play. Like, if they have all that, they're not going to go for that. And then these people that are actually entry-level that can actually come in and actually do quality work, if given the opportunity and provided training, can actually do that. They don't even make it past the ATS system. So they don't even make it to the interview. So that's where we have to fix. And again, that's the goal of the apprenticeship program is to prepare these candidates, these aspiring cybersecurity practitioners, to be able to beat that system, and then also be able to communicate their skills and start filling that gap. Again, it needs to be awareness all the way around at the business level. Again, a cybersecurity risk is a business risk. Totally. Cybersecurity is geared to protecting those critical assets that are supporting those money-making things. If you look at a manufacturing plant, there's technology around producing those products. And so if that technology is compromised, if I click on an email and then I'm able to install malware, and then I'm able to go in and then shut that system down, and then put some ransomware on there. Now I encrypt all your data and I shut down your system. In order to get that system back up in operation, you got to pay me $2 million in order to get access and actually get your business back up and operational. That is a cybersecurity risk that has presented a business challenge that you have to overcome in order to get back to making money. So the sooner that CEOs, C-suite staff, and organizations in general are able to understand that, that's when we can start making better job descriptions. We can start making better investments in cybersecurity. And then we can also fill that gap and then prevent, or at least protect, and be more resilient against those types of threats. Because those threats, now we say it's not if you're going to get hit, is when.
When, correct.
And so when it happens, do you have a plan in place? That's when you need a cybersecurity professional, like we try to train on the GRC side, governance, risk, and compliance. We train professionals to build programs so that you can be more resilient. So if attack happens, I can detect it.
Yeah.
I have a plan to respond to it. I have resources aligned to it, and then we can actually go in and minimize the damage.
Correct.
That's the goal.
Man, and it was a lot you said there, because I mean, man, I'm gonna tell you, like, it's one thing to get the people trained to come in and be agents in an organization, but leaders like myself in a business, I need to know what the heck is going on,
Right.
On that end, to even understand how my business may be at risk. So it's one thing that to educate in the skills and the knowledge gap in the cybersecurity field for the actual subject matter experts in training and that are in that field. But it's a whole nother thing to understand the business architects or the business owners that how does this fit within what I'm doing? We just need education just to understand, like, hey, let me tell you something. Just one, if it's just one time, they say, well, man, it may not ever happen for years. Yeah, but when that one time happens,
Right.
that could be millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. That could wipe you out forever. That one time, And so I think about that, and I'm like, this is why, one of our people on our team, he was a COO of a cybersecurity insurance company.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so, you look at companies now like, hey, I need cybersecurity insurance.
Yes.
Okay, to insure my business in case of a threat.
Exactly.
And it's like you said, it's not if the threat will happen, it's when the threat will happen, and are you ready? Man, I think about that, and I don't, and I know the majority of business owners are not thinking in that way. Man, they're not thinking about that. They're thinking that, hey, I'm not big enough. Hey,
Right.
this is not going to affect me. Hey, this is the thing. And I think, the IT community can do a better job of educating us, because we don't know. Like, we're novice. We don't know this stuff. We think we know, but then too, to have somebody that's even passionate enough to go and say, hey, you don't really understand the problem that you're in right now.
Exactly.
Like, it's going to that heart doctor, and that heart doctor saying, hey, you know what? You right about 2 coffees away from a heart attack. You don't even know it,
Right.
but you right there.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's the art and the science. So the science is it's the technology, it's all the technical terms, it's all the configurations, it's all the things that need to happen from a cybersecurity and IT perspective to protect an organization. So if you're in charge of that, you can communicate in ones and zeros and binary. That's how it could be. Like, if you start as a cybersecurity IT professional communicating to a business owner, that it's like you're talking 2 different languages.
Correct.
If you're speaking like, oh, well, there's a Cat 3 vulnerability, it's the CVE score is 9.9.
Yeah.
And so it's critical that we back up these systems and, we apply this thing. Like, if you're talking like that, like, it's just like Charlie Brown's teacher, womp, 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 womp. I don't understand what you're saying.
Exactly.
So this is why I said, like, just one of the skills that you have to develop is communication, number one, and then rapport.
Yeah.
Communication is like, hey, how do I translate that into a language that business owners can understand? That is taking all the technical stuff and like, hey, we need to, business owners understand risk. Like, so from a cybersecurity perspective, risk is the likelihood and the impact put together, and then based off of that, what is the risk? So how likely is this to happen? Like, hey, does this impact our industry? Do we have the same systems in place that this risk is targeting? And then if we do have that, what is the impact? So if it was to get compromised, how bad would this be for the business?
Correct.
So being able to translate that, again, likelihood is again, like, we either have the technology or we don't that is impacted by this vulnerability that it just came out. If we do have it, is it facing we call it internet facing, like, hey, does it have an IP address to where I can go and I'm in Timbuktu somewhere and I can hit that system? I should not be able to directly hit that system.
Yeah.
If I can, it's internet facing. And then that's high likelihood that somebody's going to see it. Because like I said, threat actors are scanning the environment constantly. So if they see that vulnerability and they see your IP address attached to it, your computer, they're going to hit it. It's just by default. And then what other controls or protective measures do we have in place, right? That will reduce, like, hey, it's like it may hit, but it's not likely that it's going to have an effect because, hey, we have all this stuff in place. Now, impact is how bad is it going to be? So I prefer to put a $ next to the impact. So when we have a system that goes down, we do what's called a business impact analysis on your entire system, your entire network, right? What are the call it like the top 3 things that support your business? What brings money into the bank? So we talk about that manufacturing company. Hey, I need to have this system up and operational because so if I'm talking about my process of producing this widget, these 2 systems are in place. So if any one of those 2 systems goes down, we're out. Okay, how much money do we generate an hour or a day? And then like, oh well, we generate $200,000 a day, on those 2 systems. So if those go down, all right, cool. We divide that up about 8 hours, 24 hours, and then we get an amount. So like, hey, per hour so we have some IT components that are part of that. We have some network that's attached to it. So if that network gets compromised and then it brings into scope those 2 systems potentially going down.
Correct.
Now, hey, every hour you're going to lose tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So now we're translating cybersecurity risk into business risk. Correct. You are not going to be up and operational for however many hours and that's going to be the financial impact that you're going to experience. The other thing is reputational impact. So if you are a service provider and you're pretty well known, or even just you have clients, if you get hit with a cyber attack, all your clients are going to be questioning like, hey,
my data.
Is my data compromised?
Yeah,
is my systems compromised? Is my business affected
Correct.
by you being the recipient of a cyber attack, right?
Yeah, and what they think about, even if it's subconscious, is negligence.
Yep.
And can I trust you?
Right. Did you just leave the doors wide open to have somebody cut it? Like y'all just running this shoddy operation that allows somebody to come in. Like y'all ain't even that big and this happened to y'all, right?
Yeah.
So what is the impact on my reputation? Is this going to cause me to lose clients?
Correct.
Right. And so that's where we have to make that translation from IT cybersecurity. You don't need to know it's the Exchange server. You don't need to know it's our, EC2 instance in AWS cloud. Like they don't need to know that. It's hey, what part of my business is going to be impacted by this?
Correct.
If we can explain that, then we can start communicating and bridging that gap. So that's the communication. And then rapport is the second thing, right? So rapport is I don't just come in with bad news, or my only communication shouldn't be between IT and cybersecurity when there's a problem or when I need money to solve something or I need to buy something, right? There should be a level of rapport that's there. It's like, hey, when I come in, I'm trying to understand how does this business operate? Correct. What do you need the most from IT cybersecurity to support the business? How can we help you be better? How can we go? And all businesses want to move fast. They want to get new contracts. They want to expand. As expansion happens, IT has to expand with it. Cybersecurity also has to increase its scope.
Correct.
So how do we get in those conversations and then build that relationship to where, hey, the COO is looking at another opportunity to expand to a new market. He automatically knows, oh, snap, like I need to hit Will up and make sure that like, hey, how does this impact cybersecurity? Correct. Because I've developed that relationship with him. Like I want to be of value. And so they involve me in those conversations and we can start assessing the risk of that's associated with that new market. Hey, we're going to have to bring on this new a new team member to manage. Like, hey, you're trying to move into cloud. Hey, we need a cloud architect, right? Or hey, we're trying to get a new financial service. Okay, well, what type of sensitive data is being transacted between our company and that company? How do we secure that data? How are they doing it on their end and how are we going to do it on our end? Having those conversations and building that rapport to where they invite you in and you're not just that one that's coming in and always asking for money or always saying the sky is falling.
Yeah, correct.
Like just be involved and add value immediately without there being a problem, and then just come in at the approach and like, hey, not only is there a problem, like, hey, here's how I recommend we solve this, and then work with the organization to solve problems, and then again, building that rapport helps cement that relationship. So that, and then the other side of it too is just like, if you have that rapport, they don't look at you as an adversary, as somebody that's looking to bring the compliance hammer down on them. You violated this federal regulation by doing X, Y, Z. It's like, no, like, hey, you didn't know. Let's talk you through what this is, and so that you understand what it is. And this is where that awareness comes in. Security awareness is like, hey, when you do these things, this is the impact. And if you do something wrong, don't try to hide it from us, because bad news just gets worse over time.
Correct.
So bring it to our attention, and we're not going to come and hammer you for it. Like, hey, thank you. We all make mistakes. We all get in a rush. Hey, like, I was expecting something. It was a similar email address, and I just clicked on the link. And then when I realized it, like, oh, snap, like, I probably should have took some time. Cybersecurity should not be coming out like, oh, well, hey, I'm going to recommend that HR, disciplines you and, suspends you or fires you for that. No, like, thank you for letting us know as soon as possible. Hey, let's activate our instant response plan. Let's go quarantine your system. Let's get you to change your password. Let's scrub our database, make sure nothing got compromised or anything like that. And then we move on. And then we use that as a learning tool and an opportunity to like, okay, hey, let's figure out how this happened. Okay, you were in a rush, you were expecting something. How do we then, kind of just stay in the moment and or kind of pull ourselves out of that moment and just like slow down. Hey, is that the right email address? Hey, like, should I just be clicking on random links? Is there a better method? Maybe I need to ask somebody, hey, let me forward this to, like, hey, does this look right to you? Get a second pair of eyes on it. Again, sometimes just slowing down. But again, if you don't have that rapport, when people make mistakes, they're going to hide it. Like, you're not going to know about it. This is how the cybersecurity incidents happen, and like, oh, well, the threat actor was in the system for 6 months, 12 months before they even noticed it.
The culture is, I know in Korea, I think it was either Korea, they had the different pilots while all the planes kept crashing, and it was because in their culture you wouldn't speak to certain other people in the culture. You would wait to be acknowledged before you speak, and you have to wait to this. But if you fly on a plane, y'all need to be communicating.
Oh, yeah.
And so
early and often,
and so they weren't communicating out of respect, but the planes kept crashing. They said, you know what, I gotta look at that. But that's just because they had a culture in their culture.
Yep.
The culture allowed for that miscommunication to happen through respect, but that respect ended up causing problems. And I think is what you're saying is in that culture. If you have a culture where you're always trying to lay the hammer down and you're not really providing people with, hey, I tell people all the time, I say, if you want, all my employees have a great deal of autonomy in our company, and to where they can really make things happen. But when they don't make the right moves, do you beat them up?
Right.
Yep. And so that now the next time when you say, oh, you can make a decision. Yeah, but if I make the wrong decision, you're going to beat me up.
Yep.
So I don't want to make the wrong decision. So I'm going to try to make the right decision. So in our thoughts, or in our words, we may say one thing, but in our actions, we're doing something tally different.
100%.
Yeah. And I remember, like you were talking about, and that's all about the culture and understanding. I think you almost need what you're, in the field, we kind of, as business people, we need almost like a translator, like
Google Translate for cybersecurity.
No, really, or just for anything. A lot of the technological things that, I understand stuff on a higher level, and even though I've been exposed to a lot of different types of technologies, and like I said, I know a lot about a lot of technologies, but never wanted to dive deep down into a particular thing on when it comes to those pieces. And when you are, even the certain things that what you're talking about, when we're talking about them now on this level to where it's, hey, I'm trying to break this down to where anybody can understand this.
Yeah.
I don't think that's something to where, and I tell people all the time, if you can't break it down to where a 5-year-old can understand it, do you really know it? And so I think that's something that's, if we really have a goal of making sure that the state of our cybersecurity in the United States, in our cities, in our country, in our companies are correct and in place, then we have to make sure that we're not complicating stuff for everyday people.
Exactly.
Because I can't, that's one thing, man. I can't, if I don't know, I can't get better. I can't, I don't even know what to correct.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. So when I was still in the Army, we used to have these, I was on a deployment, and second deployment to Afghanistan, and we used to have these like staff meetings at the end of the day where we like, hey, each section goes and briefs for that section. Well, at that point, again, I was training my team to be able to operate without me. So I had one of my team guys like, hey, they knew that area. They were the help desk for the entire section. So they would go and brief the help. Like, hey, you're in charge of the help desk. You don't need me to go brief what you're in charge of.
Correct.
Go ahead and do it. And I wouldn't even show up at the meeting. I didn't need to.
Correct.
Right. And so then my boss was like, hey, like, I don't see you at the meeting. I was like, I don't need to be at the meeting. He's in charge. Is he doing a bad job? Like, let me know. Like, oh, no, he's great.
Yeah.
But we just, like, everybody else has their top dog in the meetings. I'm like, all right, you want me there? I'll be there.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, and like I was like, and then I wouldn't say anything, and I still let him talk. I was just there.
Yeah.
He was like, oh well, like why don't you say anything to me? Did you have any questions?
Yeah.
He explained it perfectly. I would have stepped in if he didn't explain it well, but he explained it perfectly well.
Yeah.
So then he's like, well, I think you should brief. Okay. So again, I don't recommend anybody do this, but I explain things so technically deep that people's eyes were just glazing over, and they're like, you know what, Chief? Like, you don't need to talk anymore at these. Like, we'll just let your guy go. We understand what he's saying. I'm like, exactly. But so that was just because I didn't want to be there. Again, I don't recommend anybody do that, but we have to find ways to explain things and draw analogies to where, hey, I take a easily understandable concept and topic, and then how does cybersecurity relate to that?
Correct.
So, for example, everybody's familiar with a gated community and then my house, right?
Correct.
So, a gated community is a barrier between the outside world and this neighborhood.
Correct.
That gate is the same thing as a firewall on a network.
Okay.
That goes like, hey, you're coming in from the outside. I'm going to check you, make sure you are all who you say you are. And I'm like, hey, where are you going? Okay, you're going to that house. Let me buzz them in. Hey, are you expecting them? Cool, you're coming. Same thing your firewall does.
Correct.
Then you get on that road. That road is just like your network switches. It takes you to where those end devices are, where they're trying to go.
Yeah.
Then you get to the house, right? You got a mailbox at the house. That mailbox is the same thing as an email system on your corporate network.
Yeah.
So just like somebody has to have your actual address to go send you mail, somebody has to have your email address to send you email. You just got like you got a spam filter on your email. Like, hey, like, people just can't come in and that's a crime to actually have just somebody walking down the street, open up your mailbox, look in there, and then drop something in there. That's spam, right? So we got a spam filter on our email system, right? And then we go to the door, and then if you got a security system on your house, like, hey, I have a door lock, like, hey, my lock goes, and I got a bolt lock, and then I have a pin pad, like, hey, I can punch in the pin code, open that, and then take my key out. That's same thing as that's 2-3 different forms of a key and access to get in. That's multi-factor authentication.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you want to, I need my username and my password, and I need to get my phone. I get a text message to my phone. Like, oh yeah, that's me. Yep. Cool. Now you get access to your system. Right? Now you're in the house. You got each individual room. That's just like so think of your house as your computer, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm in my computer, and then now I got different files in my computer. That's just the rooms in your house. Like, hey, you can go into one room and you got, your daughter's, like all her Hello Kitty stuff up in there. And then you open another file system, and another person's door. That's your son with all his Marvel superheroes on the wall, right? And then you have your windows. Those are your like, you can open the windows, you can close them. You got sensors on the window to let you know when you open and close them, right?
Right.
Now, but same thing. We got ports in a network that allow access into your system, and you can open and close those ports. Like I should only be opening it for stuff that I'm expecting to come in. Right, so the only thing I should expect to come in through my window is the wind.
Correct.
Anything else, like you ain't coming in here yet,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
So then you go into your rooms, and then you have like fireproof safes. Right, and you get like, hey, that's when I'm putting all my sensitive stuff, right? So I'm like, hey, I'm putting my social security cards, my passports, driver's license if I want to be extra safe, when I'm not putting it in the car. But I put a lock on that. That's file encryption. Correct. So there's something special about this type of or document encryption. Like, hey, there's something special about this, and I want to make sure that only I have access to it. That's that little key. I need that key. You need an encryption key in order to get to a file that's encrypted. So being able to explain things like that, everybody understands, how a locked door in their house works, or how a locked box in their house, or how a doorbell system, like you got Ring or any other security system that you got out there. You understand how that works. So the cybersecurity, you can relate those things together, and then now, so when I talk about all that was just defensive depth, those are multiple layers of security that go in. We try to teach that in organization. You need defense in depth. It isn't just enough to you rely on your internet service provider to have a firewall.
Correct.
Like, well, they got a firewall that should block everything.
That's everything. That's it.
Well, somebody could come into your gated community and then not stop at that house, and they come to your house.
Because your house, your door wide open.
Your door wide open. Like,
all your stuff.
You ain't got no lockbox for your stuff. Like, all your credit cards all out in the open. Like, Sam, man, I done hit the treasure trove, right? So being able to understand things in that way and be able to relate that helps. Okay, I get what you're saying now, and you're not just talking like, hey, we need this Palo Alto firewall, next gen firewall is what we need, full packet inspection. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, no, but see what you're saying though, just with that, I never had it explained to me like that.
I think organizations, a lot of, and we call this insider threat, right? Mm-hmm. So where we've created such a negative environment in some aspects that when we have to, like, again, not everybody's going to be in your organization forever, right? You bring people in,
correct.
It's either we discover that they're not a good fit, and then we have to then terminate them, or they grow to the point to where, like, hey, they've outgrown that position, and then there's no maybe internal opportunities for them to grow into something else. Then they have to leave the organization, and we have to be okay with that. Like, I want everybody when they come in the organization to always be growing, always be developing, always be skilling up, to where, like, oh man, like, yes, I would love to recommend you to somebody else, because yes, you can add a whole lot more value walking into a different role somewhere else where I can't provide that same thing. But just like they decided to skill up, and then we talked about kind of continuity and making sure you're training up the next person. I know when they leave, we have a good system to train in place to be able to, they can move up. But what happens when we don't create that type of environment where it's all like, hey, we're putting a level of competition where it's them against each other, and it's negative. Like they're like scratching and clawing, and like they're bumping people out the way, and they're sabotaging their competitor or their co-worker stuff so they can get the trip to Tahiti this year. When you create that culture that is not conducive, or again, we talk about that security awareness where, like, hey, something goes wrong and we just bring the hammer down.
Yeah, correct.
Hey, I'm docking your page. Every dollar that we pay for this ransomware, I'm docking you.
Correct.
We create those types of environments. They're scared, number one. Number two, if they do get terminated or they have to leave, they're likely to be an insider threat. We're like, oh, well, I'm gonna make sure I do as much damage on the way out as I can.
Exactly.
So they're either taking all your proprietary data, they're putting it on their own email, like they're emailing it out to their, hey, I got a job over here. You want to know what they're doing over here? Yeah. Here you go.
Hey, this is JR McNair. I hope you've enjoyed the content so far. I wanted to take the time to introduce you to our small business ecosystem of the SB and the Small Business Nation, where we focus on not just helping you to start a business, but to start one that makes money. To start making money in your business, visit thesb.com. Now let's get back to the show.
You speak about people leaving the organization, and man, it had to have been 2006, 2007. I had this guy, and I was always trying to give people an opportunity. and we brought him in. He was doing our sites and stuff like that, and then I liked him, but he just wasn't giving me what I really needed as far as like from the. And I was just like, and I just told him, I said, you know, I take care of all my people, but he felt some kind of way like, oh, you let me go, okay, I got you. And this guy went into all of our websites that we had on the we had them hosted on GoDaddy, and this guy just dropped like something in it, and all of the websites went boom. Like,
oh man,
yeah, that happened.
Full nuclear on you.
It went.
Ooh.
This was like, and that was like 2006. And so, but I'm saying though, that happened from somebody who was a part of an organization, and that happened. So I bring that up to say that we put mechanisms in place after that to say, hey, because I just assumed I guess I was a little naive back then to thinking that, oh, you know, they weren't gonna do anything like that. Right. You know, so we didn't change. We didn't, when he got them out, we was like, oh, we didn't change the passwords.
Yeah.
We didn't do any of that. And it was like, and so, but it was a lesson. You know, the thing was, you know, a lot of those, the sites that we had, we wanted to do new ones anyway. So we just like, hey, we'll just build the new ones. It took us a lot more, you know, to go in, because we had to build out all of those websites again.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, you know, and it was like, yeah, thank God, you know, it was a hurt to us because, you know, that was extra money, time, and energy, and that I had to take my people off of. You know, it wasn't any risk to the client on that end, but it hurt us because now I had to pay these people double to do something over again because I was assuming that this guy, he was supposed to be, you know, Christian guy, and I thought it was just, you know, had some morals and stuff, and I was just like, hey, I wouldn't think that he would do something like that.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh my goodness. And, you know, so I'm bringing this up, man, to say that, you know, that was a lesson. It cost us, okay? We corrected it and put parameters in place after that, you know, but, you know, that still it still caused us a certain amount of loss during that time.
Yeah.
You know, and that was almost 20 years ago. But, you know, I can only think of, you know, the type of sophistication that some of these bad agents may have now.
Right.
You understand?
Yeah, and like that's one of the things that I'm sorry y'all had to go through that. It's a learning experience, and one of the things that we say in the cybersecurity community, don't let a good incident go to waste. And so we take that and like, oh man, that's a story we can tell in the future, just to kind of illuminate some of the challenges, some of the risks associated with that. And one of the things that our organization does is we talk about risk assessments, and that's one of the things we ask them, like, hey, how do you onboard people? What does that process look like? And then how do you offboard people? Like how quickly, like you've identified that person, if you have initiated that action and there's like, hey, we know we're going to terminate this person. Some organizations, they're like, hey, they automatically turn your account off before you even get notified that you about to get fired. You're like, why my stuff ain't working? Like, hey man, about that, come on.
Come on in here.
That's one mechanism. Matter of fact, I was at doing a contract. I won't name it was a big four firm, and they're like, once we identified that my contract was coming to an end, 2 days prior to my last day, I couldn't email outside of that organization.
Oh wow!
And they're like, yep. And then they're like, hey, go ahead and email us back that mail us back that laptop, everything. And so like, hey man, I was trying to email some clients, let them know like, hey, there's a transition getting ready. Again, nothing kind of like. Nothing that they didn't know. It's like, hey, well, here's some information that would be helpful moving forward. And they're like, Could not email anybody outside, so I had to email my manager and another coworker. I'm like, hey, here's what you need to provide to the client so they're set up for success. But I get it because, again, I was a cybersecurity professional at the time.
Correct.
I 100% get why this happened.
Yeah, no, totally.
And again, like there's one thing, like again, we do risk assessment, try to identify some of those things for the organization so that we don't have to experience some things like a disgruntled employee. And sometimes it's nothing that you actually did wrong.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that it's a relationship ending.
Correct.
So a lot of times you're in a late boyfriend, girlfriend, y'all
Correct.
break up. You know, y'all could have been on good terms.
Yeah.
But homeboy is just like, hey, I'm about to set the world on fire.
You trying to say my skills aren't good enough for your organization?
Blasting you.
Oh, I'm gonna show you how my skills are.
I'm blasting you on Instagram, TikTok, all of that. You know, the girl that blasted windows out your car.
Yeah, right.
You know, like I thought we were good. Like, that's relationship ending, breaking like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's painful, and that's how people lash out sometimes. So you just got to have protective measures in place like you implemented. But again, we talk about the risk to the organization if something were to happen.
Yeah.
Again, sometimes it's not reputation or like the clients didn't see that necessarily. Like didn't impact their ability to deliver business services to clients. But you had to rebuild that website. That's internal resources you had to spin up in order to rebuild that thing. So again, just getting awareness of what that type of thing is, and so that you're like, hey, is this worth an investment into a protective measure to prevent something like this from happening, or to be a little bit more resilient when that happens. But yeah, like sometimes insider threat is an insider threat. You can't do anything about it. What you can do, you do, and then you move forward.
Correct. And that's the thing, man. And we always have to learn. And that's the thing. When you're in business, some stuff you just don't know. And that's why it's great to have good people in the organization that are consultants, that are advisors, that are outside, that can provide that insight for you on that end. Even you got your internal team, but then you have your external team,
right?
You know, so and you know, your company provides that external team for others, right?
Yep.
So could you talk about that and how Better Everyday Cyber has an opportunity to help others?
Yeah, and so just like we were talking about, like some businesses, especially as you're growing up, larger organizations have what's known as a chief information security officer.
Yes.
Now, somebody's making $200,000-$400,000 a year, and they're focused on managing security for your company as a whole, making sure things are in place, making sure they're evaluating risk, and making sure they're putting certain systems and processes into play so that you can protect the organization. Well, smaller businesses don't really have the budget to hire another six-figure salary earner.
They may be making that.
Right. That's their full profit margin. Like their whole profit margin is just shot because they hired a chief information security officer.
Yeah.
So there's a term known as a virtual chief information security officer. So basically, if you heard of a fractional CEO or fractional COO, same concept, where instead of us being a full-time employee in the organization, we're an external provider of that service, and maybe maybe it's 2 hours a month, maybe it's 12 hours a month that we provide that same type of oversight and insight into your environment from a security perspective, so that we can advise and give you the tools to go and implement certain things on your own. We assist with certain things. So like I'll give you an example. So we do a risk assessment. After we do a risk assessment, we get for you guys in a contract, we're like a punch list. Like, hey, here are all the things that are currently need to be addressed before we can say, hey, your organization is completely secure, or like to get to a certain standard, right? And so once we develop that list, one of those things might be like, hey, like you're doing some things, you got a team, you got the IT guys are doing some stuff, but you just don't have any policies in place. So you have no way of informing your employees of what the expectation is around information security, for example. And so we'll come and like, okay, well, how about we understand your organization a little better? We ask a few more questions, like, okay, let's develop an information security policy for you so that you can articulate exactly what you expect from the organization, the employees, so that there's clear understanding. So that way, talked about that onboarding process. As soon as you onboard a new employee, hey, we will need you to review the information security policy so that hey, we don't use our corporate email address to open up Amazon accounts on our personal computer. So you get that level of expectation with that information security policy, and then you get them coming in, and then you do periodic training for security awareness training as you go about your year, right? Little 2-3 minute sessions, little emails that you come in, you kind of practice on stuff. And so we take that punch list and we start helping you kind of tick some of those things down. We might not be the ones actually implementing some of those changes. We talk about like policies, then you got procedures. That's how you do it. Like, well, you determine how you're going to do this, right? So if it's, hey, we need to implement a multi-factor authentication, we might not be the ones providing you that. Like you just contact, hey, you got Microsoft Office 365.
Correct.
And hey, now you just need to implement multi-factor authentication. Hey, have them download that Authenticator app on their phone.
Correct.
And then that way when they enter their username and password to try to log in, it's going to hit them up on that Authenticator app, give them a little 6-digit code, put it in, bam, it's in there. We didn't have to do that, but just having that awareness that that's something that you need to do to increase your level of security and increase your level of resilience against attack or people trying to compromise those accounts. That's the type of advice we try to give, and we give that on a as needed basis, and we tailor that. Like you use us however much you want or however little you want, but we give you that option. But at least you have it visibility so that you know what the challenges are, and then you figure out the best way to solve that. And we're there to kind of guide you through that process.
That's awesome, man. So, and of course, the prices would be different for me as a small business because I may have less possible risk than maybe like a bigger company that has
and when we do an engagement with an organization that's looking for our advice or our consultational services, we do a scoping conversation like, hey, let's talk about how big your organization is. Let's talk about the type of data that you have. Let's talk about the system that you have in place. Or you have an on-prem system where you got all these servers. You got a server room and a closet in there where somebody comes in there and messes with your stuff right on site. Or is it something where you've got all your stuff in a cloud somewhere? So we start talking through what the scope looks like. And then based off of that, then we determine, okay, this is going to take us, this is going to cost this amount to provide the service. This is based off of how much time it's going to take for us to do a thorough evaluation. Or if you want something, we got an express version to where, hey, we look at things kind of at a high level. Maybe we don't dive as deep, but we need to at least give you some level of understanding on where the major risk is, and then we illuminate those areas. We not dive into like, hey, give me evidence that you're actually doing multi-factor authentication. Give me screenshots from all your employees showing that they got that 6-digit code that hit there. If you say you got it, and then we're going to move on to something else. We're not going to take that time to evaluate all that evidence. If you want something just quick. Some organizations like, hey, I need to understand what our major things are, and we're going to hit those things, and then we're going to come back to you, and we're going to slowly start building these things out. Talk about like minimum viable product, or hey, my security program is here. I just need to get it from 0 to 1. I don't need to get to level 5. I just need to get to 0 to 1. All right, cool. Let's get you to 1 and get you a quick assessment in. And so again, we base it off a scope, based off a desire to do full implementation. Do you want us thoroughly involved? Like, hey, like it's one thing for us to do an assessment. It's another thing for us to partner with you along your journey to start helping you walk through how to implement those things, and then how to then update your risk profile as you develop and mature. So again, it's a right size operation, and we work with that business owner and figure out, again, based off of your budget, based off of your appetite, how would you like us to be of value to you?
So 2 questions. First question is, are there companies that you would not work with? Like, meaning that, is there a company that's too small? Is there a company that's too big?
Yeah, and so great question. There are companies, if you're starting off small, mom and pop, sometimes you don't necessarily need a big, like a consultant like us to come in.
They probably just need education.
They just need education, maybe some security awareness. Start off, just like get yourself some security awareness training. Maybe do what we call like just a very, very express assessment. Just like, hey, let's talk about, hey, are you dealing with credit card? Are you taking credit card payments or something like that? We focus on an area, and then we give you something very, very quick, very affordable that you can move forward with. And then, hey, here's a set of recommendations, and then you just move forward. And then as you grow, you can bring us on to help out with the growth process. So there's no client that's too small for us to help. And then there's also
just
some free
work. How you help them.
Right. And then there's also some free resources, right? So, we produce information, recommendations, 3-minute Thursdays. We talk about a cybersecurity topic, kind of similar to like me talking through how like you can relate home security and like a gated community and all of that to just implementing defense in depth for your organization. Talks like that open. Oh snap! I need to look into this as a business owner, and I don't need to necessarily pay somebody a couple $100 an hour or bring you on a multi-$1,000 multi-year contract to go and do. Like I just need to snap, multi-factor authentication. Yep. Quick fix. Hey, let me implement that. Set it up. Hey, everybody now has multi-factor authentication. So we definitely provide free resources. We try to right size it, but there's no organization that we can't help, even if it's just information. Same thing, there's no organization really too large because we also partner with other organizations. We have partners that provide security awareness training at scale, or skills development to where we got certification training, specific role-based training that we can give them access to by one of our partners that allows them to train their organization at scale. Like maybe I have an entire IT department that needs to understand security a little better. Maybe they need another level of certification that they need to pursue. We provide that opportunity as well. So we try to provide solutions to any size organization. Now, of course, there are a bunch of different industry verticals. You have specific requirements for different industries. Most security frameworks are pretty much the same. About 80% of it is the same. There are some nuances to where we haven't had that direct experience working with a particular sector, or like I'll give you an example. So there's ISO 27001, which is a standard that you have to buy in order to implement. Like you have to purchase this solution. We don't have direct clients that have had that issue or had that requirement to be able to implement that. So if they wanted us, if there's a new client that wanted us to do that, we'd have to say like, hey, we haven't done this before. However, we can learn that standard, purchase it, and then make that a part of that entire agreement and be able to implement it for you if that's a requirement for you. So again, like even those industries where or sectors or frameworks that we may not have direct experience in, we have the ability to scale or to be able to shift and provide that value. Or we might be honest, like, hey, if you don't want us to go through that process of trying to purchase that and then get familiar with it, it's like you might have to go to a different provider, and that's okay, right? Which is why we start everything off with
and you have relationships with somebody who
and we make recommendations like, hey, like this is actually probably a better company for you to go with, and we're okay with that because again, like this, we talk about that cyber skills gap. We talk about just we are all part of the same community as business organizations.
Correct.
And so if you get compromised, that's something that I don't want to see. Yeah. And if I can't help you directly, I want you to get the help that you need.
Correct.
The other thing is again, we got supply chain risk where, hey, I might have, again, we talk about like the partners that we have. If they get compromised, I'm affected, right? So I can't necessarily be selfish about only worrying about what I can do, what benefits me. I also have to be concerned about what other organizations are doing and making sure that they have the resources that they have, even if I'm not the one providing that. But we are all a community. They can compromise, one organization. There's one recently that was from Clop ransomware, where they compromised or we talk about Change. So Change is healthcare. Like so, Change. They manage a lot of data for healthcare industry. They got compromised and it affected the entire, every single one of their clients. All of them got compromised. So in some ways, and then there's also personal data where they weren't even like direct clients. It's just people that received healthcare at one of those facilities, and now their data is out there. And so that's what our goal is to educate everybody in general on implementing best cybersecurity practices, because as we continue to improve ourselves, we reduce the likelihood of things like that happening.
Most definitely, man. Most definitely. So when you look at, all of those things, there has to also be so first off, we're establishing you can't serve everybody, but who is probably the ideal customer for you? That you maybe like to deal with,
Yeah. So small, mid-sized businesses, organizations that are, you got anywhere from 25 to maybe a couple hundred employees generating a couple $1 million in revenue. We can provide the most comprehensive support to those types of organizations, again, just based off of their revenue and ability to be able to apply some of the recommendations that we're offering them, and also have somebody that's able to, because we prefer to partner with organizations, not just give you a risk assessment and let you go and handle it. If that's what you want, we absolutely. But organizations that are, again, generating a couple $1 million in revenue are a typical ideal audience. That's on the business side. On the individual person side that's looking at a career in cybersecurity, that's anybody, preferably somebody that has an IT background. That makes the transition a little easier. However, we can support anybody that's trying to transition into cybersecurity. But again, the requirements is just, hey, you have a willingness to learn, and then your desire to be of value to the community. We make good money in this field. However, if you're just in it for the money, the stress that goes along with some of the, like, hey, like you're constantly looking like, hey, like, are we secure? Have we done all that we can? When I do a risk assessment, that's really where I kind of spend a lot of time and intentionality. Like, hey, did I catch as much as I could, so that there aren't any surprises to where, like, oh, well, we did a risk assessment, this wasn't even brought up. Like, what are we talking about? Like,
Correct.
I want to make sure that there's a desire for the people to want to help, to want to be and add value, not just take value. Like, hey, how much can I get paid? Okay, hey, this is an assessment. They're going to give me this amount of money. I'm gonna get it done as quickly as possible. Not exercise a level of excellence in the product, and then also in the information that's provided, because that
I've seen that a lot.
Yeah,
Will, like, people getting money, people say, "Oh yeah, I do this," but they're just there just to do it and say, "Oh, I did it."
Yep.
But then they don't really care if it really, really works. They may care to an extent, but they're not going to the point to say. And that's how I hear people all the time. I say, just because you did it don't mean that you did it right or did it to the best of your ability.
Exactly.
And I see a lot of companies just, hey, I did it. See, I did it. And it's just like, but you just did it. Like,
right.
You didn't do it.
Yeah, the goal has to be to add value and then give that organization the tools, awareness, and sometimes resources that they need to be successful. And be like just fast tracking through a job and not implementing a sense of like, hey, if this was my company, how would I want this product to look, or what would add the most value to me when I look at this product? That's the type of individuals that we like training and developing and growing, and then putting them out into the job market so that they can provide value to those organizations. Because like cybersecurity is everybody's responsibility. For the practitioners, you have to come into it being able to add value. And that's what allows organizations to, hey, receive those individuals, but also be willing to implement what they're saying, because they know, like, hey, like, you're not doing this just to check the box. There's compliance, and then there's security. Like, compliance is just a minimum standard. If you're just looking for the minimum standard, and then once you achieve that, you're like, all right, cool.
Yeah, I'm done.
Good to go. Holla at you, right?
Yeah.
If that's it, then you're setting up that organization for a false sense of security.
Correct.
They're compliant. They're checking all the boxes.
Yeah.
But their organization is still at risk, and that doesn't sit well with me. And then I want to make sure that we people that are involved with Better Everyday Cyber are also that same mindset. And then our clients that we deal with, even if it's just a consultation, they can see, because I will drop, again, I'll provide recommendations even in just a regular consultation. Like, hey, this is free of charge. Just our conversation, I think you need to really like jump on this immediately, even if it isn't us doing it for you. But you really need to do this, and here's some resources, here's some websites that you can go to gather some more information on your own. Because ultimately, those are the type of organizations where if they do have a challenge where they run into an issue, maybe they have an incident, maybe they have challenges getting cyber insurance because they don't have certain things in place. We're the people that they're going to reach out to because we added value even when it didn't cost them anything, right?
Totally.
So just being able to provide resources when people see you as a problem solver, when they have gotten value from you, when they've gotten valuable information from you, they will reach out to you in the future. And that's what we want to be there for them. Again, now, in the future, but ultimately we just want them to be prosperous business-wise, but also safe and secure cybersecurity-wise.
Listen, man, I could sit here and I've learned a lot just from this conversation, talking to you. And I have two last questions that I want to ask you. One is a little going into potential worst case scenarios with the world. And the next thing is more of a practical, pragmatic thing for everyday businesses, individuals on that end. And that thing will be kind of twofold, because I was going to ask twofold question on that. But the first question that I have, I see in the world, I see the, I think in Atlanta, it was a organization, it was some hackers that went in and they took, I think it was either the cities or it was like somebody's information, and they were like, hey, unless you give us $4 million, $2 million, whatever, we not going to give y'all this. We're going to release it out. We're going to do X, Y, or Z.
Right.
And so, and that was mentioned on the news. We saw it on the news. I don't know what happened after that, if they actually ended up giving the people the money and they ended up doing that. But it's kind of like a slippery slope. Once they get it, what's to say that they say, hey, well, we need more now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
At what point is it? So I do see things like that happening. But my question is I saw the movie that I saw, and it was just pretty much showing how some foreign body or whatever it was, they didn't really ever define what it was that did it, but it really like shut down everything.
Yeah.
In the country, and it was like everybody was just, everybody's cars, the Tesla cars, right?
The auto driving themselves into the crash. Yeah.
All those are computers. You're talking about these computers are, we're driving around in computers. And so if somebody hacks that, they're hacking everything. You got cars that could become killers. This out here now, this is so much. And I don't think we as everyday individuals that don't live in the space that you guys live in, we don't think about the possibilities of those potential things happening. And my question is how probable is that, or is that like really off the grid? That could not happen, or how probable is that? I don't know. Like I'm just curious. I'm just interested just to know if was that really sci-fi, or was it not so off the off of the spectrum?
Yeah. So we live in a world now. So there's a desire to have everything interconnected, right? And so we want our technology. We want our refrigerator to be able to kind of like, oh snap, we're short on eggs. Yeah. Let me go ahead and submit an order to Kroger that I can get my eggs ordered so they can get delivered, and then but it has to be connected to the internet. So they call that like things like Internet of Things, right? So all these appliances that we don't think of as computers, they're connected to your net, they connect to your Wi-Fi, and it makes things a lot easier on us. If we have our climate control in our house, is just automatically everybody left, it's been a while, hey, let me go ahead and make sure we optimize and make sure everything is energy efficient so that our bill isn't crazy, because nobody's here. Like why are we maintaining a optimal 72-degree environment and ain't nobody in here?
Yeah, correct.
And so same thing with our cars. They're interconnected because they have all these electronic components, computers that need to get updated, but they're also connected to networks. OnStar, it's a network connection to where they can tell you when your car got stolen. Like, oh yeah, we know exactly where your car is. So you have a lot of benefits from this interconnectedness and everything being on the network. At the same time, because everything is on the network, I can access a lot of things on the network that I can access stuff in South Korea, I can access stuff in Canada, I can access different types of devices. And so Now, for that movie, a lot of things have to go wrong.
Yeah.
Those are a lot of different communication channels. Some of it is satellite. Some of it is actual, fiber connections that run across the ocean floor. A lot of things have to go wrong. And I think that, like, the concept of that movie is just a targeted attack to where they hit a bunch of different components at the same time.
It was kind of like the Army or their Army or their Navy just saying, "Hey,
it's a military operation."
Instead of us coming there with guns.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that is the United States. That's what they say. Yeah, we don't have as many people as maybe other countries if you look at all of our population, but majority of people in the United States, a lot of people in the United States are armed, or they have a weapon somewhere, so they could become militia if need be.
Right.
But when so they say, well, maybe that's maybe not practical to come to the United States from a very, gun to gun, or very, aggression. We're going to go through the back door.
Oh yeah.
And so if somebody was to say, hey, I'm gonna spend all my resources to, this is the only chink that you have in your armor. It's here.
Yeah. So they have typical military. We got like land, air, sea has been the typical thing, right? So those are the battle space.
Yeah.
But now we have cyberspace as a potential warfare battlefield that is constantly. We got nation states that are looking at each other from a cyberspace perspective. This is why, the United States is also trying to, or the Western world is decoupling itself from China.
Yeah.
We look at, just AI chip making. Like, there's advancements that are capable in certain providers that they don't want China, for example, to have access to that level of advancement in their chip technology. And then also just not having that dependence on China, because again, for decades they've been, the lead manufacturers,
everything.
It's hard to find something like, it wasn't made in China, right?
But
it's cheaper.
But back then it was like, it's made in China. Ha 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 ha. That's what it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Now it's like, that is a stamp. And as I look at this, is a separate thought just on the manufacturing side, how long it would take to catch up, just because we had that type of dependency for so long. But no, continue what you were saying though.
Yeah, because you save costs by going with because again the standards of labor that go into that, you didn't have all those same costs as you would in the United States, where it's minimum wage. Right. So when you look at things from that perspective, and you look at how nations want to advance, if I can't go at you force on force, I need to go somewhere where the playing field is level.
Correct.
Cyberspace is that space. And so they have entire nations that have a cybersecurity workforce that is aimed out at other nations that they consider as adversarial, or not to their economic benefit. Like, they have something like North Korea. Their economic part of their economic plan and revenue is from like people that are going in and ransomware and hacking stuff. I'm like, hey, guess how much money I got? Thank you. You have just supplied money to the North Korean government. So when you have that in play, the next level is, in a actual conflict, and how do I disrupt people? If I disrupt your technology and your ability to, like, if I got cars that are on the network, refrigerators that are on the network, I have even our traffic control systems, our air control systems, all those are network systems where if I can compromise that, how confident would you be in your company or your country if I can't confidently jump on a flight and reasonably expect to land somewhere?
Correct.
So it's that, like, terrorism is like, how do I get into the psyche of these people by smashing into their world some way, shape, or form, to where I cause them to feel anxiety, I cause them to feel fear, and then my fear would then, like, if I got a scared general public, they are going to then translate that fear to their government that should be protecting them. Like, what are you doing about this?
Correct.
And so now when I have you fighting internally,
correct, civil war.
Now, like it gets civil war again. Then we start talking about classism. Like, hey, we're the have-nots. We don't have like y'all got all this. Like all the people that got all their bunkers, they're all good. Us people that ain't got that, now we're not good, right? So cyberspace has that ability to touch things in the physical world now more than ever because we're so interconnected. Now, how do we protect against that? Again, this is all about awareness. This is how do I protect myself personally, right? What things am I clicking on in my emails? What sites am I traveling to? What things do I have connected? Like, hey, do I have a separate Wi-Fi network on my house that is just my Internet of Things, and it's separate from where I keep all my laptops and computers connected to where they don't have access to that sensitive data. It's things like in a corporate organization doing things like a risk assessment so I can see where all the gaps are, and then I try to do my best to kind of plug those holes based off of the resources and capabilities I can apply to it. It's about training up the workforce to be able to A, have professionals that are able to speak to that, but B, the workforce in general so that I can protect my organization just as HR staff member. I know what things not to click on. I know not to, I need to encrypt a sensitive information like social security numbers like that before I send it somewhere else. Or maybe I just keep it in cloud and only people have access to it. I don't share it out anywhere else. It's doing things like that. It's us just being cyber aware and then creating mechanisms to be more cyber resilient. And just having an open conversation about it. For a long time, hackers, especially when the internet just became a thing, hackers were going in and just disrupting things. And if you found a bug in a system, you would charge an organization. You wouldn't tell anybody about it. And the goal, like, hey, if you found a bug, like, hey, I'll keep it to myself. Nobody knows about it. I'm safe, right? But what we're finding is just like when we kept those things from each other, we found somebody else would get compromised. Well, I had the information available. I knew this was an issue. I could have shared that and we could have prevented this from happening as opposed to like, hey, if I keep this a secret, nobody else is going to find out about it. But what we're now finding is now there's a thing called bug bounty where, hey, if somebody finds something and they can let a company know like, hey, like I actually found this in your infrastructure. I went to your website and I was able to go and access your database and access all these sensitive files. Oh, snap. Thank you. They give that person a monetary amount of money, like, hey, 10, 15, 20, 30, some multiple six figures amount for finding these faults, because now I can go back and I can secure this and then I can publish it like, hey, like anybody that has this system needs to do this in order to secure themselves. So just information sharing is key as well. And then just, again, like, again, I want to get geopolitical, but as we have nations that are working together, developing cybersecurity policies that we can all implement as a whole, as a nation. There are a lot of executive orders that come from the White House that, again, they're trying to implement basic cyber hygiene. If we just do the basic stuff, a lot of this stuff just goes out the window, right? Correct. Again, just not presenting a soft target to threat actors. But again, just basic cyber hygiene, information sharing, training your personnel, being aware as an individual, and then making sure that we are all supporting each other, and we're not looking at just our own problem set. Like we're looking at things as a whole, and then just sharing information and working together to make our businesses more secure as a whole.
Man, that's amazing, and I think about that, man. And so with that, my last question, which is a 2-part question, is this: what advice then would be 3 things, if I could only do 3 things as a business, okay, what would those 3 things be that I need to do?
Absolutely. So number 1, if you have any external facing assets, make sure those are if they have to be externally facing, make sure you scan those.
When you say externally facing?
Externally facing as in they're connected to the internet.
Okay.
Right?
Gotcha.
I have a direct IP address that sits on the internet to where, like, say, for example, a website. Okay. Externally facing. So gotcha. Anybody can hit that. They know your web address. They can hit it. Making sure that, hey, you're protecting that as like, hey, it doesn't connect to databases to where I can go and hit that. And then from an external user perspective, not even involved in your organization, I can hit your database, right? Any vulnerabilities that are associated with external assets, make sure those are hit first, right? The second thing is multi-factor authentication. on all accounts. So complex passwords, multi-factor authentication on all accounts. That'll protect yourself from getting your accounts compromised. And so if your account gets compromised, hey, they're now an employee of your company. If that threat actor is now an employee, they have access to all the crown jewels, and they'll escalate their privileges and become an admin. Now they're the lead IT person. Now I can affect everything in your organization. Yep. So again, protect your accounts, access management. That's multi-factor authentication, complex passwords that aren't shared. Like I don't have the same password multiple places. The third thing is awareness, just general awareness. Of like, hey, I get an email or I see a random thumb drive in the parking lot that says Fast X movie 4K. Oh snap, man! 4K and Fast X. Like, man, let me plug this in. I'm gonna do that on lunch, man. Plug that in, and now you just compromise your system, right? So just general security awareness as an individual, and then as employees to an organization. You do those three things as a business, you're in a pretty good spot. And so that those basic things will hit some of the high levels and give your business a good protective bubble that makes you a little bit of a harder target for a threat actor to come take advantage of.
No, totally, man. You talked about locking down those external components like the websites, making sure you have those things secure. You talked about the multi-factor authentication, making sure that you have complex or sophisticated passwords and those things on that end, and just the overall awareness, okay, to make sure that just people even know, like, I don't know if I don't know, right. That looks good, don't look like it's going to hurt nobody, so let me do, but if I know, I know. Yeah. My next question that I have, and the last question that I have, getting good skilled people into the workforce. I'm trying to get into this field. Where do I start? Is there a pathway? Where do I go? How can I get into it? What would be your advice to help me do what you do, right, and go along the path to become a master?
Yeah. So cybersecurity is a broad field. So the first thing I ask people when they want to get into cybersecurity, I'm like, hey, what aspect of cybersecurity you want to focus on? So we have everything from the SOC or the Security Operations Center.
Before you answer this question, that was a point. Could you tell them the specific area that you focus on?
Yeah. Okay.
What is that?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with that. So So what I ask people is, what area do they want to focus on in cybersecurity? Me specifically, I'm in this field of GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. So we partner with organizations and we help them build their security programs, identify areas of risk, and then help them work through a plan of action in order to remediate, mitigate, eliminate, or reduce risk in their organization, in their cybersecurity. So
what is the difference between that and like, for example, if that's an apple, just tell me where the orange is.
Yeah.
Like,
So I would say GRC is the not sexy sister in the cybersecurity family. The sexy sister is like what we call ethical hackers. And so those are the individuals that they are skilled at understanding how to get into an organization, get all your crown jewels and your treasures, all your sensitive data and all that information. On the ethical side of things, they will then create a report and like, hey, these are all the things that I was able to do to get in your organization. So if you actually put controls in place at all of these points, then that will prevent somebody like me that isn't doing this for a good reason to actually get access to that information. That's the sexy side. And then on the introductory side on cybersecurity is also what's known as SOC analysts. So those are the individuals that are sitting in in your network. They're monitoring your network and they're seeing this traffic that's coming in. They're seeing people come in from the outside and trying to access files, or people that are compromising accounts. Maybe like, hey, this account just got locked out. And, that somebody tried to access it 99 times and hit the wrong password. They're seeing all this stuff in the environment, and they're then setting up alerts, and they're notifying you like, hey, this is what's going on. They're also implementing protective measures on the fly, like, hey, let's kind of isolate that traffic. Hey, let's block that IP address. So there are a bunch of different aspects. Then there are people that actually tune those tools that you use. Bunch of different. We'd be here a long time, but there are different avenues. So again, I'd ask people like, hey, where do you want to be? On the GRC side, it's like, hey, do you enjoy dealing with paperwork and understanding like frameworks and how policies should be written in order to generate a result? Like, how do I craft a requirement that helps us be more secure? And how do I help organizations see risk, evaluate risk? So like, hey, what's the likelihood of somebody ransomwaring our information? What is the likelihood of this asset being compromised that's on the network, right? So if you enjoy, from our perspective, for a GRC, if you enjoy like communicating with people, getting people to understand risk, evaluating things and helping assessing, and then just partnering with them, they're like, hey, pointing them and guiding them in the right direction, understanding how to like what things to prioritize, GRC might be your space. If you want to go more along the line, so in order to do that, we'll just talk that real quick. I would definitely recommend get a base understanding of IT in general, right? So, hey, how does a computer work? How does a computer communicate with a server? How does a computer communicate with a server that's in the cloud? Understanding that, understanding network protocols, understanding just security in general. Like, hey, what is a firewall? What is a switch or router? What is a antivirus? Like, what do those things do? And then how do those things work together in order to secure your environment? So once you have a basic understanding of that, then you can start building those skill sets to like, okay, how do I then evaluate risk, threats to this environment? How do I then determine, okay, how much of a priority should I place on this? How much is this going to impact this organization? And then what things do I need to put in place for this organization to help protect themselves and then understand how they need to operate their business from a cybersecurity perspective and protect those critical assets. If they're trying to get into a penetration tester certified ethical hacker space, they need to dive deep into IT and networking. They need to know how different operating systems work, what different commands they need to understand and familiarize themselves with, how to run scripts. Programming helps and automate things, because a lot of things hackers are just hitting a button and they're running a script and they're running a program and it's doing all the work for them. They come back in a couple hours later and they see the results. So being able to do that, understand how different programming languages, how to write scripts, that helps as well. And then understanding again how to write reports. Like, hey, how do I then document what I'm doing? I can do all this stuff, but how do I explain this to a business so they can understand? Okay, these are the things that I need to do in my business to implement defense in depth and prevent this from happening. If you're doing it on the SOC, that's a general entry level position. You just need to have alertness. A lot of that, you're working shifts, and you just need to understand what network traffic is. So understanding there are free tools out there like Nmap that show you how to analyze network traffic. And then you see, we call this indicators of compromise. So if something weird is going on, to where something's going on and there's an expected program that should be running, and then it's renamed something, hey, you can identify that and then see that, okay, these are the recommendations that we have. But just understanding what general network traffic should be doing, what processes it should be doing, RAM, what everything does, how everything works together. Definitely getting that theory down, and then getting practical experience. And they got a bunch of labs that are out there. I recommend there's a guy named Dr. Gerald Auger. He has a bunch of different videos that he's done on YouTube, literally going through different platforms and teaching. Like, hey, you want to be a SOC analyst? Hey, download this tool right here, do this exercise, do this lab, and then you'll be able to get that skill set. If you want to be a penetration tester, hey, this is how you need to do that. Hey, you can download this lab, do this, and you have that skill set. And then our organization also provides that training, mainly in the GRC space. Just again, teaching you how to understand the theory, understand how to assess risk, understand how to work with an organization to develop a risk register based off of what you identified in that assessment, and then how to then implement certain strategies, how to build an incident response plan, how to build a business continuity plan, how to implement security awareness in an organization. So just again, understanding that skill set, GRC is a very, very personable position of all of the. I'd also say like the penetration, because then they have to communicate with the organization in a real way they understand. But definitely need to be able to communicate soft skills, build rapport, build understanding, then translate that information in a way that people understand. So if they're looking to get in the field, again, open understanding, willingness to learn, understand the IT, the technology, understand how to utilize analogies to help grasp concepts for people that aren't necessarily in our field. and then just a willingness to stay connected to what's going on in industry. I watch it's the Daily Threat Beat from Simply Cyber, and basically they take all the cyber news across the world, and then Dr. Gerald Olger, he evaluates and provides analysis, and hey, this is what it means for you if you're a network engineer. Hey, this is what it means to you if you're a GRC practitioner. This is what it means to you if you're a SOC guy. Hey, you guys need to go and pass this system immediately, right now. Hey, this one, hey, you can give this some time. Hey, like you just need to send a couple emails, just remind people to be resilient. Don't click on emails and be like that. So staying in tune with what's going on in the industry, and to make sure, because again, you could be a master one day.
Sure.
If you don't do anything 2 years from now, you're back to being an apprentice or a journeyman.
Yeah,
like,
correct.
You're just going to continue like that. You're going to slide your way right out of relevancy.
No, totally, man. And I hear that, man. I hear that all day long. And so, I think that, from what I understand, the SOC is, you can probably get in there, maybe simpler, maybe understanding even. I believe even having a glossary of terms would make somebody know more than 99% of human beings that maybe exist. And then you're talking about, having more of the penetration side of it, where these people may be programmers in and of themselves and know how to create script, know how these things communicate. When I watch the old 90s hacker movies and stuff like that, you see those different things there. And then, you have the GRC side where you're analyzing, and you need to be able to get these pieces to to make sure the organizations and all these people are understanding these threats so that they can make decisions more on that executive and on that decision-making level, right? And so would that be a good
absolutely
analysis?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
So again, just all those are different skill sets, which is why again I asked, hey, where do you see yourself? I didn't see myself in the GRC space. I was IT, and so I was hands-on in these systems.
Yeah.
But definitely you want to see, and the other thing is too, like work-life balance. So the SOC world is something that like it can be a lot of hours, and you can be on. There's some things where you're on call, or something goes wrong, where incident happens, you got to get called in. GRC people ain't getting called in for a lot of just emergencies. Like, hey, we did our assessment. Hey, we'll hit y'all up on Monday, and then we'll talk about what happened. But you definitely want to look at, again, like how technical do you want to be? And how technical are you currently, and do you want to stay in that space? Some people like, hey, I want to be inside. I want to see all this traffic. And they love like being part of the matrix. I'm like, hey, I'm getting all this information. I'm in here. The other people that they're like, hey, I love the challenge of breaking into a network and getting like using regular stuff. Like, hey, this is just a regular thing that Microsoft does as part of their product, and like I figure out a way I can flip that and then get in there. Like that challenge, that level of I've never had that real desire to do that. So again, like you just got to figure out what works best for your personality, your current skills, or your aspirations, and then make that decision moving forward. Again, like there are a bunch of free resources out there, and then we provide that as part of our training too. It's like, hey, like we're not focusing on this, but this is where you can get some more information, so you can just kind of just be aware, even if that isn't the particular niche that you kind of gravitated towards.
Totally, man. Totally. No, listen. I mean, I was, and I'll say this just about getting into that field and how hot cybersecurity is, because I buy a bunch of domains, and so I know the value of domains, and I look at domain relevance with relevance in the marketplace of things, and was looking at a particular domain around cyber with cyber in it. And that domain was $300,000.
Wow. Yeah.
$300,000. And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't think I've ever seen a domain name outside of some that were like really like 2-3 character domain names that were that was that expensive.
Yeah.
But that goes to show you how relevant this industry is. And when you look at relevance, as far as young people or parents looking how they're going to send their kids into X, Y, or Z, you want to go in a relevant field.
Absolutely.
You want to go in a field that's going to, and the fact that we know that there are either hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of job potential or demand, but they don't have the supply.
Right.
Because the skills aren't there. I think that's amazing. And, I just want to say, man, listen, I know people can find you at bettereverydaycyber.com.
Exactly.
Right. And y'all can, I want y'all to have an opportunity to also look Will up. I know he has a lot of great content he's going to be pushing out and rolling out. And I'm telling you, if this has helped you, just make sure that you're in tune with us and you're letting us know so we can go from here. So this is the whole thing. So I'm excited, man. I want to say, man, thank you for providing this information to us, man. Like, this has been phenomenal. I'm excited and ready to go, man. So, y'all stay tuned. Look forward to learning more about cybersecurity. You can find the information below in this video. And if you have any questions, reach out to us, man. We're here to help you. And I want to say, Will, once again, man, hey, thank you, my brother, for doing what you do, man.
Anytime.
Look, man, you're making the world a better place, man. And we appreciate it, And so listen, y'all, if y'all need him, reach out. I'm J.R. McNair here. Until the next time, keep making it happen.